What happens when they've got all the immigrants out of the country? They will do the same thing the SS did in Germany. They'll turn their guns on everybody else.
I just wanted to weigh in on what I think happened and why Trump assembled all those generals and admirals. I think it started in 2020 when Milley finally said enough of this. When Trump held up the Bible upside down, and Milley obviously identified his role as not being part of enforcing the law.
I agree. He later apologized for that, in fact, in the press.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what happened as a result, right after that, and maybe you caught this and maybe not, because most people didn't, Trump then gave a speech talking about why the rank and file likes him and the officer corps doesn't. Mm-hmm. And he said that
What happens when they've got all the immigrants out of the country? They will do the same thing the SS did in Germany. They'll turn their guns on everybody else.
I just wanted to weigh in on what I think happened and why Trump assembled all those generals and admirals. I think it started in 2020 when Milley finally said enough of this. When Trump held up the Bible upside down, and Milley obviously identified his role as not being part of enforcing the law.
I agree. He later apologized for that, in fact, in the press.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what happened as a result, right after that, and maybe you caught this and maybe not, because most people didn't, Trump then gave a speech talking about why the rank and file likes him and the officer corps doesn't. Mm-hmm. And he said that I'm keeping them out of war. So he was clearly driving a wedge between the officer corps and the rank and file. Now, what happened this week was he assembled those people to see how they would react to his new pitch with his the Department of War, Whiskey Pete, giving his ideas how we should approach the Department of Defense. Trump gets on, met with silence, unlike Fort Bragg with the enlisted people. Mm-hmm. He knows now that he's got a problem with the officer corps and the senior officers. Therefore, there's a purge coming. Yep. Many of them will be forced out. Yep. And the last thing I'm going to mention is the economy right now is perfect for Trump because it's allowing him to go into rural areas to take kids who are coming out of high school who have no job prospects at all because nobody's being hired. There are no job hirings.
Throw them into ICE.
Load up. That's right. That's right.
Yep. And ICE is going to become. And here's the big question in my mind, Brian. Let's say that ICE is now on course to be. I mean, they're in a massive hiring binge right now, $50,000 hiring bonuses and all kinds of stuff. But they're on a path to become the largest single police force in America, much like Hitler's protection detail, the SS, became the largest police force in Germany eventually. It took a couple of years, but it did. And the question in my mind is, the SS initially was participating in getting the people out of Germany or rounding them up anyway and putting them in camps, that they argued were not true Germans. That was the Jews, of course, and the Gypsies and queer people, that they're not true Germans. And so Trump is going after people who are not true Americans. What happens when they've got all the immigrants out of the country and we still have 50,000 ICE guys running around with guns looking for something to do? That they will do the same thing the SS did in Germany by right around 1939, 1940. They'll turn their guns on everybody else. And, what do you think?
They, of course, they're going to take an oath to Trump and not to the Constitution. I mean, the one thing that's missing here is that when you joined, I was in the service, I was in the Marine Corps, and you take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, not the president. Teddy Roosevelt talked about that. The loyalty is to the country and the Constitution, not the president. Trump wants to change that dynamic, and therefore he's turning this into what he wants in his image and likeness, a police state controlled by him. But at the end of the day, Tom, here's what it comes down to. A third of the country did not vote in the 2024 election. That's how he won, right? And most of those people, I suspect, are suffering from his policies. If they don't get out and vote in the midterms after experiencing the pain of the policies, the beautiful bill and all that, and they don't come out again in 28, I don't know what the future of this country holds, frankly.
Well, this is why they're frantically buying up the media. This is why, Larry Ellison and other right-wing billionaires are on the verge of taking control of CNN and TikTok, and they've already got the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times and Fox News and CBS, and I mean, it's just, it's a wholesale attack on the truth in America, basically, on reality in America. And, whether they will be able to sustain it, I don't know. I mean, right now, it seems like the two walls, the two barriers that are holding for democracy are late night comedians, and arguably just, all the Democratic Party. I mean, it's like, and our generals, maybe.
Well, that's right. That's right. It's they're the last line of defense.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, a friend of mine said, it was a Republican, said, "Are you hoping for a coup d'etat?" And I said, I have no comment on that. But I said, as far as I'm concerned, I think we're in a position where we're losing our democracy. And the one thing is, when you talk to Republicans, they'll tell you, well, it's not a democracy, it's a republic. Of course, it's a democratic republic. You need the people to vote their representatives. It's a demos, the people, the Greek word for people. But they completely dismiss the idea of a democracy because they are a minority party and they know how to rule in the majority by disenfranchising voters and controlling the media, Sinclair Broadcasting and other groups of that nature.
Yeah, I get it. I'm with you. Brian, thank you. Well said. Thank you very much. Today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Richard Wolff's Understanding Socialism. This is from the introduction. Socialism is a kind of yearning for a better life than what capitalism permits for most people. Socialist yearnings are as old as capitalism itself because they are its products. Where and when capitalism's problems and failings have accumulated criticism and critics, socialist voices have arisen. And so it is again now. Any serious discussion of socialism must begin by acknowledging socialism's rich diversity. Whatever particular aspect of socialism we choose to analyze, they need to be located within socialism's complexity. That avoids presenting one's own interpretation as if it were the entirety of socialism. In this book, I focus on the economic aspects of socialism, how it differs from capitalism in broad outlines. I'm more interested in socialist critiques of capitalism and their implications about socialist alternatives than in the particulars of the few early experiments in erecting socialist systems, USSR, People's Republic of China, and so on, that history so far offers. Finally, my own education and work constrain me to concentrate on Western Europe and North America. Some important aspects of socialism are thus not covered or discussed here. Yearnings for better lives, such as socialism proposes, are not new. In slave societies, the slaves hoped and dreamed of lives less hard and less out of their own control. Their yearning aimed to obtain freedom. They sought social change that would preclude any one person being the property of another. In feudal societies, the serfs, free in the sense that no one owned them, yearned for better lives too. Their subordination to lords included heavy labor and other burdens that they wanted lifted. They hoped and dreamed of a society in which they would not be bound to the land, the lord of that land, and the feudal dues of labor and subservience. The serfs mobilized in the 1789 French Revolution to demand liberty, equality, and brotherhood. In effect, the serfs had expanded on what the slaves had called freedom. In the American Revolution against British King George III, the revolutionaries were neither slaves nor serfs. They were mostly self-employed farmers, craftspeople, and merchants subject to a foreign feudal kingdom. They wanted liberty as individuals to pursue their dreams without hindrance from feudalism or monarchism, whether foreign or domestic. They added democracy to the goals advanced by the slaves and serfs before them. The different systems of slavery, feudalism, and small-scale self-employment produced masses of people yearning for better lives. Eventually, each of those systems provoked revolutions. Many people then sought to break away from and go beyond those systems.
The French and American revolutions marked key moments in the social transformations of major pre-capitalist systems into capitalist ones. By capitalist system, we mean that particular organization of production in which the basic human relation is employer-employee instead of master-slave, lord-serf, or individual self-employment. The revolutionaries who wanted and built capitalism hoped and believed the transition to employer-employee relations of production would bring with them the liberty, equality, brotherhood, and democracy they had yearned for. The revolution's leaders promised to themselves and to the people they led that those goals would be achieved. But the transition to capitalist employer-employee relations that increasingly replaced the previous slave, feudal, and self-employment relations of production had unintended consequences. Capitalism soon proved to be different from what its revolutionaries had hoped. While it enabled some people to be more free and more independent than slaves, serf, or self-employed subjects of monarchies had been, it also seriously limited freedom, independence, and democracy for many. Capitalism betrayed many of the promises made by its advocates. It produced and reproduced great inequalities of income and wealth. Poverty proved to be as endemic as capitalism seemed equally adept at producing and reproducing both wealth and poverty. The capitalist rich used their wealth to shape and control politics and culture. Democratic forms hid very undemocratic content. The cyclical instability attending capitalism constantly threatened and hurt large numbers of people, and so on. Growing numbers of employees within capitalism began to yearn for better lives. They defined those yearnings first in the familiar terms of the earlier French and American revolutions: equality, fraternity, liberty, and democracy. They criticized a capitalism that failed to deliver those to most people and demanded social changes to achieve them. Many people still continue to want a better, softer, friendlier capitalism, where government regulates and intervenes to achieve more of what the French and American revolutionaries had yearned for and promised. They are also often self-defined as socialists. However, capitalism's development provoked another, different perspective that also called itself socialism. In that view, capitalism had not broken from slavery, feudalism, and monarchy nearly as much as its advocates had imagined. Slavery had masters slaves, feudalism had lords serfs, and monarchy had king subjects as their key sources of their inequalities, lack of freedom, oppressions, and conflicts. The employer-employee relation of production and capitalism generated parallel problems. Capitalism installed monarchies inside individual workplaces, even as monarchies outside workplaces were rejected. Kings mostly disappeared, but inside workplaces, the owners or their designated boards of directors assumed king-like powers. The book Understanding Socialism by Richard Wolff.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, top of the brand new week to you. Happy Monday. America's Fourth Amendment is on life support. What do you do when the government becomes the criminal? It's time for states to start arresting people who break the law. We'll talk about that in a moment. Also, Donald Trump's war on America. Can Trump's invasions into blue states and cities be stopped? Is all this leading to martial law? Has Trump opened himself for prosecution in the Hague? We'll talk about all that stuff in the first hour of the program. In the second hour, democracy has taken a crash course in America. Gerrymandering is a top concern. They're actually international groups that rate democracies around the world have downgraded America. I'll give you the details in the second hour. This is also very bad news for Donald Trump. A shock poll, the majority of Americans now believe Donald Trump is hurting the economy. Will right-wingers take a tanking economy? Or is he losing support? It looks like he's losing support. Also, voter fraud is apparently real, and it's all being done by Republicans. I mean, this is just crazy, what I'm seeing here. Matthew Boedy, PhD, will be with us in the third hour of the program. He will be our only guest for the day. He connects the dots between Kirk, Trump, and the broader Seven Mountains movement in a way no one else has. He's got an amazing book. You're going to find this an absolutely fascinating conversation in the third hour. And our Geeky Science, there's a new nasal spray that prevents you from getting COVID if you're in a crowd or an airport or an airplane or something like that. So, FYI on all that stuff. Now, all that said, my op-ed today over at HartmannReport.com is titled "America's Fourth Amendment is on Life Support. What do you do when the government becomes the criminal?" And remember the old TV shows where the cop would come to the door and bang on, "Hey, I know you're in there, criminal Bill, I know you're in there. Open the door, let me in." And Bill yells from the other side of the door, "Do you have a warrant?" And the cop goes, "No, but open the door." And the guy says, "Well, come back with a warrant and I'll open the door." And the cop walks away, muttering to himself, "Well, that's going to take a day. I got to go find a judge." No more. Now they're kicking in doors, shooting pepper gas balls into the open windows of cars driven by reporters, smashing windows and furniture, concealing their faces and identities like the Klan did in the days of old. In Chicago, they've shot 2 unarmed people, killing 1, and there wasn't a warrant signed by a judge to be seen anywhere. People are asking, are we there yet? Is America fascist? Is this now a militarized dictatorship? Well, last week's illegal, unconstitutional military assault on an entire apartment building in Chicago argues that the answer to that question is yes, we're there. And if that attack in Chicago on that apartment building does not cause a level of outrage similar to the outrage about Jimmy Kimmel being canceled, we're screwed. Which is why I'm talking about it. You need to be talking about it. You need to be talking to your media about it, whatever radio, TV station, newspaper, whatever you consume. Ask them, are you covering this story at this apartment building in Chicago? Because this was a naked violation of state and federal law. This was kidnapping under state law. This was assault under state law. This was destruction of private property, vandalism under state law. Excuse me, and under federal law, pardon me, it's a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment. I mean, this is exactly the stuff that the founders were flipped out about, that the British were doing here in the 1760s and 1770s, when they tried to put down the protest movement that really began in a big way with the Boston Tea Party in the fall of 1773, and then led to the American Revolution. The founders and the framers of the Constitution, who were also the founders of this country, wrote in the Constitution, in the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, and I quote, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized." In fact, over the weekend, there was a Chicago alderperson who, this is like the city council for Chicago, right? Who was at a hospital. There was 2 ICE officers standing outside the emergency room because there was an undocumented immigrant in the emergency room being treated. They were waiting to capture this person. And this alderperson, this member of the Chicago equivalent of a city council, simply asked them, "Do you have a warrant?" And they slammed her up against the wall and then put handcuffs on her. That is criminal assault. Now, there are state laws, and by the way, I said this last Friday, I'll say it again. Kristi Noem and Thom Hartmann and Trump and Vance and Hegseth, they chose very carefully when they picked this apartment building because it was a low-income apartment building filled with black and brown people. If they had done the same thing on one of the, in one of the apartment buildings on, Michigan Avenue or Wacker Drive, I forget my geography of Chicago. Those of you listening to me in Chicago know what I'm talking about. There's some very nice parts of Chicago. In fact, most of Chicago is really, really nice. If they had raided a building full of white people looking for the 2 gang members that they say they got, hell would have rained down on them. But no, they went after black and brown people. And then on top of this, Trump called the Democrats Satan over the weekend. We've got a judge's house that it burned to the ground. 3 of her family members are in the hospital right now because she's a liberal judge, apparently. Somebody asked Stephen Miller about that, or somebody asked the question, is the Trump administration going to talk about this? And Stephen Miller just goes nuts, saying, how dare you to bring that up? You're trying to incite more violence. Words to that effect. And then Trump comes out with this national security directive that instructs the 200 plus local police and FBI joint terrorism task forces to be on the lookout for any group of people or any person showing the indica of terrorism, including being anti-Christian, anti-capitalism, extremism on migration, race, or gender, and hostility toward those who hold traditional views on family, religion, or morality. Do you have a queer kid? A black or Hispanic friend? Are you black or Hispanic? Are you a union member? Have you failed to attend church over the past few years? Are you Jewish or Muslim? Are you Unitarian? Have you ever donated to a civil rights group? Have you ever voted Democratic or voted for a Republican who Trump despises, like Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger? Well, then you're next. They may have already started surveilling you, tapping your phone, reading your emails, collecting your browser and location history. Now, this isn't the first time we've had masked agents of the state acting as police. The Klan did it right here in Portland, Oregon in the 1920s and in the 1870s. In fact, the Klan so completely controlled the state of Oregon in the 1876 election, the Hayes versus Tilden election, that they couldn't count our votes for the Electoral College, which is why, Rutherford Hayes became president. And finally, Oregon, and you had Klan members wearing their hoods with guns strapped around their waists, going out and doing police functions here in Portland, Oregon, and in a number of other places around the country, by the way, after Reconstruction and during the 1920s. There was a big Klan revival after, and I think it was 1913, 1914, that President Wilson, Democratic President Wilson, played the Klan recruiting film, Birth of a Nation, in the White House. And it just went viral. So here's what you need to know. Christopher Armitage over at his Existentialist Republic Substack newsletter points this out. He said, federal agents are committing state felonies every day, breaking and entering, kidnapping, assault, when they kick down doors without judicial warrants, when they detain citizens without probable cause, when they point guns at children. These are crimes under state law, and Democratic governors have the power to prosecute these crimes. When ICE agents face potential state prosecution for breaking down doors, they'll start getting real warrants signed by real judges. When pointing guns at families could mean assault charges, they'll think twice. When detaining U.S. citizens could mean kidnapping prosecutions, they'll check ID more carefully. And Trump can't pardon state crimes. ICE people who commit these crimes and are prosecuted by states go to state prison. Federal government has no say in it. Armitage points out, so when ICE breaks down a door with only administrative paperwork, that's burglary under California Penal Code 459. When they haul away citizens without probable cause, that's kidnapping under Penal Code number 207. And when they point weapons at unarmed families, that's assault under Penal Code 245. So what I'm suggesting, what he is suggesting, is contact your mayor's office, contact your state representatives, contact your state attorney general, contact your governor, and then, of course, call your federal officials at 202-224-3121, your congressman or woman and your 2 senators, and tell them it's time for local officials to start arresting actual criminals who are committing kidnapping and assault and breaking and entering and vandalism in clear sight of all of us. Let's have some law and order here, huh? Begin the prosecutions.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Defending America from the weapons of mass deception. I'll be right back with you. By the way, I posted my daily takeover on Daily Kos today as well. Just FYI. Ed in Portland. Hey, Ed, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Just spent the morning. I drove past the ice building again. I wasn't there over the weekend, had stuff to do, but I can tell you nothing really has changed except there's maybe 20 people in front, people walking their dogs, bicycles. And we know from watching the news media reports that the federal officers had absolutely no trouble keeping their driveway clear, moving vehicles in and out, and there was no assault on the building. So although things got heated and there were non-lethal munitions all over the place, it's far from a war zone.
Yeah.
The thing I noticed this morning that's different, which you might get a chuckle from, is I took a look at the rear of the building because in theory this is a war zone and we have to bring in hundreds of National Guard Army troops to protect the building, this one building. The rear of the property is only protected by a rental chain link fence. No different than you would put up like at a sporting event or just to keep a construction site from having people fall into ditches.
Right.
And, I mean, you'd be a fool to try to scale it. Don't take me wrong. I'm sure they have video surveillance on the fence and they'd come around. But the fact that it doesn't even have barbed wire on the perimeter fence of the building shows that they know they are in no danger.
Yeah. Well, and they're not. I mean,
absolute bullshit.
Yeah. There you go. Ed, we can't use that language on the air. I'm sorry. So I've got to drop you. Susie in Willits, California. Hey, Susie, what's on your mind today? Apologies to anybody who's offended by Ed.
Greetings, Tom.
Hey, Susie.
I just wanted to talk about Pete Hegseth.
Yeah.
And yesterday on Good Morning America, they have that little ticker tape at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And this is what it said that Pete Hegseth, of course, Pentagon, plans to random polygraph testing to crack down on leaks to the media.
Yeah, they're doing that in the Pentagon. Yep.
Okay, because I hadn't heard that, and that's, I mean, if you take it to court, it's admissible. What are they going to do with that?
Well, they can use it to fire people.
And how are they going to evaluate it?
Yeah, they can use it to fire people. They don't need... any
validation.
actual, they can fire for any cause, and I don't know if these people have civil service protection. I would be surprised. I don't think that the Pentagon falls under the Pendleton Civil Service Act of 1886. I just don't know, but I don't think so.
No, I was just shocked to hear that.
Yeah.
It's
a terror campaign.
Every day.
They're trying to terrorize their own employees.
Yeah.
Trump thinks if he can make Americans afraid enough, they'll start to love him. He just desperately wants to be loved. He's a broken man.
In an obscene way.
Well, no, as a child he never got any love from his parents, and he's still despeatly seeking it. It's
what
really
I mean
pathetic.
is that he didn't get it.
Yeah,
So
it was the
it's
same
an
thing with
obscene
Adolf Hitler,
love.
by the way. Who grew up in an abusive family, with a distant father and a probably schizophrenic mother. Susie, thank you. Thank you for the call. 21 minutes past the hour. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. America is at a crossroads. In my new book, The Last American President, I reveal how Donald Trump isn't a one-off. He's a product of a decades-long scheme by billionaires and corporate oligarchs to destroy our democracy from within. You'll learn how Trump's psychopath father and also his mentor, Roy Cohn, molded him into a weapon for authoritarianism. How billionaire networks built the machinery that made his presidency inevitable, and how our democracy is dying from an empathy deficit that treats human suffering as acceptable collateral damage for profit. But authoritarianism is not inevitable. We can still reform, resist, and reclaim our democracy if we act now. This isn't about left or right. It's about democracy versus authoritarianism, about whether government still serves people or billionaires. The stakes couldn't be higher. Learn the truth and find out how you can save our democracy with The Last American President, my new book. More information at hartmanreport.com.
They used to knock. Now they kick. And the echo sounds a lot like freedom breaking.
Out on the edge of Chicago town, helicopters drown out the cries. Masked men with no names or warrants, dragging dreams into the night.
They're kicking down our door, and the law don't live here anymore. They're burning up the paper that once kept us safe and sure. Before the men that's bleeding on the floor, and the ones who swore to guard it are the ones who broke it first.
They say it's just for safety, they say it's for the cause, but there's nothing safe about a boot that doesn't pause. When they come for your neighbor, your friend, your kin, they won't stop there, they'll come again.
What do you do when the badge becomes a mask? What do you say when your freedom's just a task? Do you whisper? Do you kneel? Or do you stand up and make them feel? They're kicking down our door, and the light is fading fast. If we don't fight for justice now, this moment's gonna last. Before the minute's crying from the ashes on the floor, and if we don't rise together, there won't be doors anymore.
When the government becomes the criminal, the people become the law.
26 minutes past the hour. Here in Portland, an 84-year-old couple. Both of them were 84 years old. They were standing in front of the ICE facility here in Portland. Elderly couple. He was wearing his Vietnam veteran cap and using his walker. And they were violently pushed to the ground by a large group of agents who rushed them. She is in the hospital with a concussion. This is from the Oregonian, our local newspaper. Lori and Richard Ekman, a Vietnam War veteran with 10 years of active duty. They collected the signs they saved from the No Kings rally. Richard's sign said, "Vets against militarization." Lori's said, "We'll swap one little King Donald for 10,000 plus immigrants." And it was a completely peaceful meeting. And around 2 p.m., a large group of agents burst out of the building and rushed at the Ekmans and other protesters, knocking them to the ground. This is assault. This is violent assault. These people should be arrested. Meanwhile, we have two governors warning of martial law and calling this an invasion. I'll tell you about that on the other side of the break. And I'll pick up and Stephen Miller going nuts. And Portland planning the naked bike ride. We have specific suggestions on that. I'll tell you about that after the break. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's 27 minutes past the hour. This is the place where smart people get their news. We'll be right back.
Today's book in our book club is The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Who Stole Your Vote and How to Get It Back, by this guy, Thom Hartmann. This is from chapter 1, or from the introduction, actually. In 2016, 6% of Americans who were eligible to vote nominated Donald Trump as the GOP's presidential candidate. It was 8% for Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side. Trump went on to be elected president by 26% of eligible voters. The modern American oligarchs have largely stayed in power using 3 simple elements: explicit and overt racism, massive disinformation campaigns, and voter suppression. No ideas, no push for better schools, hospitals, airports, roads, or bridges, or reform of our health, energy, or financial systems. No promise of more and better jobs. None of these staples of past presidential campaigns can be found in pretty much any Republican advertising today. Instead, the public Republican message is all about race, or the subset of race, religion. Muslim stands in for brown Arab in GOP speak, and immigration, aka brown people from south of our border, and socialism. Meanwhile, Republican secretaries of state across the nation are vigorously purging voters from the rolls. Over 17 million, more than 10% of America's active voters, in just the 2016-2018 period, according to NBC News. After the 5 Republican appointees on the U.S. Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, 14 GOP-controlled states moved within a year, some within days, to restrict access to the vote, particularly for communities of color, students, and retired people. In North Carolina, for example, 158 polling places were permanently closed in the 40 counties with the most African-American voters just before the 2016 election, leading to a 16% decline in African-American early voting in that state. An MIT study found that nationwide, Hispanic voters wait 150% longer in line than white voters, and black voters can expect to wait 200% longer in line to vote. In Indiana, then Governor Mike Pence's new rigorous voter ID law caused an 11.5% drop in African-American voting. Students are suing for their right to vote, and retired people who no longer drive but care passionately about their Social Security and Medicare are being turned away at the polls by the hundreds of thousands because their driver's licenses have expired. The obvious failure of 40-plus years of Reaganomics and GOP policies to maintain a functional middle class in America has been a problem for the modern GOP. In 1974, for example, the GOP had outright control of only 7 states. The message, elect us and we'll help the rich people, just didn't generally resonate with American voters. It's the reason why, outside of the fluke elections of 46 and 52, Democrats controlled the House of Representatives outright for 3 generations, from 1933 to 1996, and controlled the Senate for most of that time. Desperate to win the presidency for the GOP in 1968, Richard Nixon went so far as to commit treason by torpedoing a peace deal with President Lyndon Johnson that President Lyndon Johnson had worked out with the North and South Vietnamese. According to Abul Hassan Bani Sadr, then president of Iran, Ronald Reagan did the same thing by cutting a deal with Iran whereby they would hold on to the U.S. embassy hostages until after the 1980 presidential election, torpedoing Jimmy Carter's chances of re-election. But in 2000, the GOP changed tactics. After Reagan was almost busted for his part in Iran-Contra, he testified that he had forgotten about details of the program more than 80 times. His growing Alzheimer's spared him an indictment. They realized that getting busted for treason wasn't worth the risk. They needed a plan B, and it was deliciously simple. If most voters don't like what you're selling, then just don't let them vote. Paul Weyrich promoted this idea back in 1980 when he was campaigning for Reagan after co-founding the Heritage Foundation. And indeed, many Republican luminaries, such as William Rehnquist, who went from serving the GOP by standing in polling places and intimidating Hispanic and Native American voters in the 1960s, to becoming Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, rose up through the ranks by participating in Republican-run voter intimidation schemes. Voter suppression became the foundational go-to tactic for the GOP in 2000. Although the GOP attacked Democratic presidential nominee Al Gore with smear and innuendo, ridiculing him for helping write the legislation that created the modern internet, for example, the main thing that got George W. Bush into the White House was voter suppression. His brother, Florida Governor Jeb Bush, and Bush's Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, threw somewhere between 20,000 and 90,000 African-American voters off the rolls. They were able to get the vote close enough. The 5 Republican appointees to the Supreme Court functionally awarded Bush the presidency. The BBC covered this in 2001 in 2 major investigative reports that were seen all over the world, except on any American media. By 2016, the Republican Party had fine-tuned its voter suppression and intimidation systems to the point that they ran like well-oiled machines in nearly 30 states. Between the 2012 and 2016 presidential elections, for example, Ohio had purged more than 2 million voters from its rolls, the vast majority, more than 2 to 1, in heavily African-American and Hispanic counties. The 5 Republican appointees on the Supreme Court ruled in 2017 that they could keep it up. And other states have since adopted their new tactic of caging voters. The book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, by me.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out. Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. So here we've got governors speaking out. Governor Pritzker is saying that this is an invasion, that Trump is invading his state. And Governor Newsom, Gavin Newsom of California, just came right out and said it. He said, America is on the brink of martial law. Do not be silent. Pritzker said, we must now start calling this what it is, Trump's invasion. It started with federal agents. It will soon include deploying federalized members of the Illinois National Guard against our wishes, and it will now involve sending in another state's military troops. And then our congresswoman here in Portland, Maxine Dexter, she said the president is abusing his power, attempting to militarize our cities. The power of the people must remain greater than the people in power. We need to show up in peaceful protest across the nation. Stay loud. She added, we cannot rest. The president is abusing his power, attempting to militarize our cities. Yeah. Meanwhile, Stephen Miller goes nuts. He says, the issue before us now is simple and clear. There is a large and growing movement of left-wing terrorism in this country. It is well organized and well funded and shielded by far-left Democrat judges, prosecutors, and attorneys general. The only remedy is to use legitimate and then ... force, basically. But here in Portland, we've figured out how to respond. The naked bike ride is cranking itself up. Seriously, they sent out an email to everybody, and they've got 10 pieces of basic advice. No shame in wearing underwear. Wear sensible shoes. Hairy individuals should avoid duct tape. Bring a fanny pack. If you ride at night, you must have a white front headlight. Nudity in public area. I didn't know this. Nudity in public areas as a form of protest is protected under Oregon's Constitution. Photography is discouraged for obvious reasons. Touching and lewd comments and staring is not allowed. Ride carefully and buddy or go with the group. And finally, this right-winger, a professor at George Mason University's Scalia Law School, senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Eugene Kontrovich, wrote an op-ed in which he's talking about how the International Criminal Court has already launched an investigation against Donald Trump for militarizing our cities. And, well, actually, his topic was killing the, we don't know if they were tourists or if they were fishermen or if they were out whale watching or whatever, all these people off the coast of Venezuela that we've been blowing up. And he's got advice for Trump on how to attack the International Criminal Court before they have him arrested. Wild stuff. So what's on your mind today? Ramon in Loveville, Maryland. Hey, Ramon, what's up?
Not much. I just had a comment and a couple of comments, but the main thing is I saw all this coming back a few months ago when Trump made it clear that he no longer needed MAGA to support him. the poor whites he doesn't need anymore, because he basically said when they were asking for the Epstein files that he basically doesn't want them anymore.
Yeah.
Which gave me the impression that he was saying that I have enough power now. I can use my military in the inner cities now. I don't need your help.
Yep.
I don't need your vote. The other thing is, the only defense I know against a bunch of guys masked and unidentified walking around with gas masks on and shooting canisters at peaceful protests is oil spray paint. It's non-lethal, and everybody with the mask that gets his lenses painted would have to take the mask off.
Don't do it though, Ramon. That's assault. Do not do it.
That's a bad, but that's the only thing I can think of. But they won't ever give you a chance to do that anyway.
They've already shot 2 people in Chicago and killed one of them. I mean, I would stay as far away from these people as I can. I mean, obviously, if you're going to protest, do it on, in a public area where it's legal, but. Do not confront these guys. They're completely out of control right now. Ramon, thanks for the call. Paul in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today?
Well, Tom, the Supremacy Clause shall not be construed to dismiss the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is written and applies to the federal government. That's what it was originally written to.
Yep.
Although
the Supreme Court has extended it to every American in every place and every state agency.
As on a case-by-case basis. It's incorporated to the states. The Bill of Rights, the amendments of the Bill of Rights, are incorporated into the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment on a case-by-case basis. And that's why the certain police departments' rulings have applied it differently than we might expect. But certainly applies to the federal government. We haven't been used to seeing the federal government acting as a police force.
Yeah,
that's why
I think it's the first time it's happened since the '60s, since the civil rights era.
Right. Yeah, that's right. But
and then Reconstruction before that.
There are credible reports that ICE tear-gassed Chicago Police Department officers when they arrived on the scene to help mitigate the chaos that was created by this unprovoked attack.
Yeah.
That certainly isn't legal either.
Nope. And like here in Portland, they beat up, an 84-year-old couple and gave grandma a concussion. These big, tough guys.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they are completely unhinged. And as you have said, I have been on this and alerted a number of state representatives. I honestly didn't think that they were paying attention to this, Tom, because you know what? It's kind of like COVID. Now, when COVID broke out, I was in Michigan living with my mom, and COVID broke out here in Kirkland, right, very close to where I live, here in the Seattle area. Okay, so I told in Michigan, nobody was taking it seriously. And I knew the first person that died of COVID was the mother of one of my friends. She was in that care facility.
Whoa.
And I said to my mom, nobody's taking it seriously here, but it's going to be here. And within about 6 weeks, it ravaged Michigan because everybody thought, oh, that's just the liberals up.
Well, Trump was saying that. You had the president of the United States saying, don't worry, it's just like the flu.
Yeah, that's right. And he said, we're going to be going back to church for Easter. Yeah. And that's what people were thinking. And that's why it really ravaged a lot of the states. But I think that because what happened in Chicago hasn't happened here yet, but I am sending this email. I've got a big email chain going here with a number of state legislature and saying, you better let Governor Ferguson know. And I've been assured that he is keeping on tabs of it, but you can't just the laws. Just the Supremacy Clause doesn't. Yes, the federal government can enforce federal law, but that doesn't mean they can supersede and traipse upon state laws and not obey those laws too. They have to. Yeah, that's true. The states cannot enforce federal law, but you look at it this way. There's two cases that I keep hearing people, expert legal commentators, they don't talk about them, but in 1858, there was a case called Prigg versus Pennsylvania that said the states, Pennsylvania, did not have to help the federal government enforce the Runaway Slave Act. That was in 1858. In 2012, remember, in Arizona versus United States, the Supreme Court ruled that the state could not help enforce federal immigration law, even if they wanted to. Remember, SB 1070 sought to codify, as they said, federal law into Arizona state law, and the Supreme Court said no. So
that was the Papers, Please bill that the Republicans were pushing in Arizona.
The whole thing about sanctuary cities. It just means we declare we're not helping you because we don't have to.
Right.
You know, we don't have to help you, and besides that, we're not allowed to.
Yeah.
So this is.
Yeah,
it's very bad.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting for a Chicago police officer or a Portland police officer or a Los Angeles police officer to arrest one of these masked, armed guys who may or may not be ICE. We have no idea because they don't, identify themselves, and see what happens. And I think Trump is salivating, waiting for that moment.
Yeah.
Because that's when he declares insurrection and martial law and locks down the state. And that's the moment that America ceases to be America.
Let me ask you, I'm actually hoping that Governor Ferguson will deploy the Washington State National Guard to protect us before Trump gets anybody in here.
Yeah.
That's what I hope.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise Trump is going to try and federalize them.
Makes sense.
If he, I don't know. I just think that
it makes sense. It makes sense. Paul, I got to move along. Final thought?
Yeah. No, that's what I was
That's it. Okay.
about.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Good talking to you. Louise in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Hey, Louise, thanks for listening on Sirius XM. What's up?
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say when I was listening to the Pete headset.
His speech to the generals, you mean, last week?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he said that, so interesting, that anyone who would not fight for their country isn't worthy of being a citizen. Oh, the only people that deserve peace are those that are willing to fight and defend it. My father fought in World War II against the fascists, and he did mention the religious pacifists that didn't have to fight and how he had to fight for them because that's what our country was about, about protecting people's religious freedom. So the Mennonites, the River Brethren, the Amish are all pacifists, and they don't have to fight for their country, but they have a right to their religious freedom, and that's why, like my dad fought in World War II.
Yeah. Well, the Second Amendment, the first draft of the Second Amendment had a phrase in it that said, and those religiously objecting or, to military service are exempted.
Objectors.
Yeah. Yeah.
The conscientious objectors, right.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
I'm sitting there listening to it, and I went, holy cow. So he didn't know what he's talking about. Of course, he doesn't the whole thing, but that struck me. Nobody said anything about it, so I just thought I'd mention it.
Yeah. Well, you did, and you did it very well. Louise, thank you very much for the call.
Appreciate
it. Good talking to you. It's 46 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
By the way, the Supreme Court said to Ghislaine Maxwell, thanks, but no thanks. We're not going to take your case. You get to stay in your country club prison where Trump has installed you to keep your mouth shut. And welcome back. Harold in Santa Barbara. Hey, Harold, what's on your mind today?
Hey, good morning, Mr. Tom. Good job. My question is, since the Supreme Court has declared that corporations, company, or businesses are people, can all these people that are being harmed, can they arrest these companies and fine them for the injustices that have been dealt to them?
Which companies?
Well, let's say, like Walmart. Isn't that a corporation?
Yes.
that is considered a human being now, or something
No, it's
like
considered
that?
a person under the law, which is different from a human being. It means that they have, they have the ability to pay taxes, and some laws apply to them. I mean, it's kind of a gray area, but no, you can't arrest a corporation. You can arrest the executives of a corporation if the corporation breaks the law and their orders. That's an easier way to do it. So, yeah.
Oh, well,
Alrighty?
well, too bad.
Yeah.
Too bad. Dave was on to something, though. Thank you.
There you go. Okay, good talking to you. Thank you. Jake in Seattle. Hey, Jake, what's up? Thanks for listening to KBCS.
Hey, Tom. Yeah, thank you. We got no power as Democrats right now in the executive. We've got very limited power in Congress, and we have absolutely no representation at the highest levels of the judicial. The Democratic Party does have a lot of power, though, in the form of about half of the voting population.
Yep.
And that's why, I think we really need to be encouraging the party and our elected leaders as members of that party to have the party be taking a more active role in the civil disobedience. These 50-51 protests, those should be spearheaded by the DNC. We need the DNC threatening, single days of general strikes leading up to, every month to every week, going on to ongoing strikes, and using the immense resources that they have to set up programs to help people who are going to be on this strike financially, with food, with housing.
Yeah,
But
I'm with you.
it
I'd
seems
love
like
to
the
see a
only
more
way we have to
activist
push back.
Democratic Party.
Yeah, and at this point, what other option do we have? What other way do we have to push against the authoritarian takeover of our country? Only through civil action, and we need the group that represents approximately half of this country that has the microphone and has the ability to do this, to get up off of their seats and take action and get involved with the people who support them. Anyways, thank you, Tom. Appreciate you always.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. I well said. Appreciate the call. Sean in Britain, South Dakota. Hey, Sean, you got a quick one?
I do, kind of. I want to talk about COVID, the after effects, and protecting each other at the protests. I won't be able to attend. I have had COVID a couple of times, and I caught a virus a few weeks back. Not COVID, but it went straight to my lungs, and I'm having a really hard time recovering.
Ooh.
And so talking makes me out of breath. I apologize. But the things that are happening at the protests and the things that are happening on the streets, such as the chemicals being sprayed directly in the faces of people, unwarranted, unprovoked.
Yep.
So instead of just the N95 masks to protect each other, wear the full clear visor masks, which are not real sturdy, but will partially protect from those chemical sprays.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then you're getting two protections for one.
Right, and a mask. Yeah, excellent points. Sean, thank you. Thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate it. And thanks for being brief. I appreciate that, too. We were up against a hard break. Thank you. It's 10 minutes, 9 minutes before the hour. I'll be back with you in a minute. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. One of the grand questions that political scientists have been scratching their heads over for years in America is, why do right-wing billionaires fund anti-black history movements? Why are they pouring money into these people? Why are they funding anti-trans movements? I mean, what does this have to do with being a billionaire? Well, it turns out it has a lot to do with it, and here's why. Almost 30 million Americans lack health insurance. 37 million of us live in dire poverty. 1 in 5 of us are illiterate. A quarter of Americans suffer from a diagnosable mental illness and can't get treatment. 316 people are shot every day in America. 44% of us carry student debt. And the billionaires don't want to pay income taxes to deal with any of these problems of society. That's the real issue. If they can get us fighting with each other over black history or over trans people or kids, they win. Then we're not talking about taxing them, raising their taxes to where they should be. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com that you can read and see all the stats and all the hot links. Check it out.
I used to walk these streets unafraid, head held high, no need to explain, but now the boots are back. the whispers too, and they're looking for someone who looks like you. They don't knock, they demand no room for doubt. In your own hometown, you're a stranger now. They say it's law, they say it's peace, but all I hear is papers, please.
52 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Marilyn in Okeechobee, Florida. Am I saying that right, Marilyn?
Okeechobee. That's the biggest lake in Florida.
Okay. Thank you. What's up?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say I'm so disappointed in the Supreme Court. They're the ones who need to step up and stop this treasonous dictator.
Yeah.
And maybe the Republicans will fall in line, but they're the ones allowing this, and it's sinful that they're allowing our country.
I think they're terrified. I mean, look at this. Last night that you had a judge, a liberal judge, who had ruled against Trump, whose house was burned down.
Yes. Yeah. Well, now's the time to step up. And there's 9 of them and 1 of Trump.
Yeah.
And if they don't speak out, then they will be targeted, because that's how this tyrant works. I have written to our chairs, our senatorial, congressional, and our Ken, and asked them to, now's the time to speak up.
Yeah, Hitler eventually went after his
media.
Supreme Court. I mean, the dictator, you go along with the dictator thinking everything's good and I'll be on his side, and oh yeah, it'll be wonderful. And then eventually it gets so bad that you say, hey, wait a minute, and then they come for you too. Marilyn, thank you. So well said. Thank you very much. Deborah in Lockport, Illinois. Hey, Deborah, what's on your mind today?
I was harking back to your rant where you were talking about Ku Klux Klan in Portland, Oregon. And I just finished reading a book called The Fever in the Heartland by Timothy Egan. And it was about the rise and fall of the Ku Klux Klan in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And its grand wizard, I think he was, D.C. Stevenson.
Is this back in the teens and 20s, you mean, or back in the...
tried and convicted of murder. I'm sorry?
Which era was that? I mean, there were 2 peaks of the Klan. One was Reconstruction.
This was in the 1920s.
Okay,
in the 1920s.
Yeah, okay, that was the more recent one.
No, fairly quickly, all within that decade.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, the governor of the state was a Klan member, and and they had the police, and I think Indiana had the largest Klan membership in the country at that point.
Wow!
But the point I wanted to make about all of that was the parallels between what was going on with the Ku Klux Klan in places like Indiana and today with the Trump. It's just absolutely appalling. I mean, D.C. Stevenson was a con artist and a grifter, and he sounds like somebody else we all know and don't love.
Yeah, they've they no longer wear white robes and a hood. Now they wear a what's that thing called, a gaiter on their faces,
and a red hat
and camouflage. Yeah, gaiters, camouflage, and red hats. And but it's the same people. It sure appears to me it's the same people. This is awful stuff. Deborah, thanks for pointing that out. That's a fascinating history lesson.
Though, it gives me a little hope, because we threw them off in the 1920s. We could do that today if we,
I think so. Yeah. Well, actually, it takes enough of us waking up. When you read the book, did you get any clues as to what led to the downfall of the Klan? I thought it was World War II, but I'm not a scholar of that. I haven't really studied that time in our history.
Well, part of it was Stevenson's conviction for murdering this woman. I mean, he was a truly horrible man. He was a sexual predator, and he was violent, with the women he took.
And he was the governor?
So he was convicted of murder, but what took it was, in those days, you had newspaper people who were bound and determined to get out the truth in spite of Klan harassment. There were some newspaper editors and whatnot. I'm sorry, I'm old. I'm forgetting the name. He went to jail numerous times. He published a small-town newspaper in Muncie.
So it was the media that took down the Klan.
And then there was the what?
It was the media that took down the Klan.
It was partly the media, because they were getting the story out there. I mean, for a long time it wasn't. The media was just as complicit then as they are now. But there were, what do I want to say, little outcroppings of resistance.
Yeah, well, we're seeing that here now too. So, hope springs eternal. Deborah, thank you. Thank you so much for the call and the history lesson. I really appreciate it. We'll be back on the other side of the break. Democracy is crashing in America, and the world is noticing. I'll tell you about that. Stay with us. Oh, and shit.
You're listening to
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Today's book in our book club is The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Who Stole Your Vote and How to Get It Back, by this guy, Thom Hartmann. This is from chapter 1, or from the introduction, actually. In 2016, 6% of Americans who were eligible to vote nominated Donald Trump as the GOP's presidential candidate. It was 8% for Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side. Trump went on to be elected president by 26% of eligible voters. The modern American oligarchs have largely stayed in power using 3 simple elements: explicit and overt racism, massive disinformation campaigns, and voter suppression. No ideas, no push for better schools, hospitals, airports, roads, or bridges, or reform of our health, energy, or financial systems. No promise of more and better jobs. None of these staples of past presidential campaigns can be found in pretty much any Republican advertising today. Instead, the public Republican message is all about race, or the subset of race, religion. Muslim stands in for brown Arab in GOP speak, and immigration, aka brown people from south of our border, and socialism. Meanwhile, Republican secretaries of state across the nation are vigorously purging voters from the rolls. Over 17 million, more than 10% of America's active voters, in just the 2016-2018 period, according to NBC News. After the After the 5 Republican appointees on the U.S. Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, 14 GOP-controlled states moved within a year, some within days, to restrict access to the vote, particularly for communities of color, students, and retired people. In North Carolina, for example, 158 polling places were permanently closed in the 40 counties with the most African-American voters just before the 2016 election, leading to a 16% decline in African-American early voting in that state. An MIT study found that nationwide, Hispanic voters wait 150% longer in line than white voters, and black voters can expect to wait 200% longer in line to vote. In Indiana, then Governor Mike Pence's new rigorous voter ID law caused an 11.5% drop in African-American voting. Students are suing for their right to vote, and retired people who no longer drive but care passionately about their Social Security and Medicare are being turned away at the polls by the hundreds of thousands because their driver's licenses have expired. The obvious failure of 40-plus years of Reaganomics and GOP policies to maintain a functional middle class in America has been a problem for the modern GOP. In 1974, for example, the GOP had outright control of only 7 states. The message, elect us and we'll help the rich people, just didn't generally resonate with American voters. It's the reason why, outside of the fluke elections of 46 and 52, Democrats controlled the House of Representatives outright for 3 generations, from 1933 to 1996, and controlled the Senate for most of that time. Desperate to win the presidency for the GOP in 1968, Richard Nixon went so far as to commit treason by torpedoing a peace deal with President Lyndon Johnson that President Lyndon Johnson had worked out with the North and South Vietnamese. According to Abul Hassan Bani Sadr, then president of Iran, Ronald Reagan did the same thing by cutting a deal with Iran whereby they would hold on to the U.S. embassy hostages until after the 1980 presidential election, torpedoing Jimmy Carter's chances of re-election. But in 2000, the GOP changed tactics. After Reagan was almost busted for his part in Iran-Contra, he testified that he had forgotten about details of the program more than 80 times. His growing Alzheimer's spared him an indictment. They realized that getting busted for treason wasn't worth the risk. They needed a plan B, and it was deliciously simple. If most voters don't like what you're selling, then just don't let them vote. Paul Weyrich promoted this idea back in 1980 when he was campaigning for Reagan after co-founding the Heritage Foundation. And indeed, many Republican luminaries, such as William Rehnquist, who went from serving the GOP by standing in polling places and intimidating Hispanic and Native American voters in the 1960s, to becoming Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, rose up through the ranks by participating in Republican-run voter intimidation schemes. Voter suppression became the foundational go-to tactic for the GOP in 2000. Although the GOP attacked Democratic presidential nominee Al Gore with smear and innuendo, ridiculing him for helping write the legislation that created the modern internet, for example, the main thing that got George W. Bush into the White House was voter suppression. His brother, Florida Governor Jeb Bush, and Bush's Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, threw somewhere between 20,000 and 90,000 African-American voters off the rolls. They were able to get the vote close enough. The 5 Republican appointees to the Supreme Court functionally awarded Bush the presidency. The BBC covered this in 2001 in 2 major investigative reports that were seen all over the world, except on any American media. By 2016, the Republican Party had fine-tuned its voter suppression and intimidation systems to the point that they ran like well-oiled machines in nearly 30 states. Between the 2012 and 2016 presidential elections, for example, Ohio had purged more than 2 million voters from its rolls, the vast majority, more than 2 to 1, in heavily African-American and Hispanic counties. The 5 Republican appointees on the Supreme Court ruled in 2017 that they could keep it up. And other states have since adopted their new tactic of caging voters. The book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, by me. Prior to 2015, Turkey and Saudi Arabia.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the second hour of the program. Apologies for cursing at the very end of the first. I didn't realize my mic was open. I was upset with myself that I had failed to mention that our Chicago book selling or signing event is sold out in Los Angeles. Go to kpfk.org for information. And in San Diego, go to news.knsj.org. I'll be in San Diego on the 17th, and I believe Greg Pallas is going to be with me. We're going to have a good time. So, in fact, I'm quite sure Greg is going to be with me. He confirmed it last night in a text message. So, a lot going on, and democracy has taken a crash here in America. This is an interesting story. There's this group called, well, there's a couple of groups, the VDEM Institute and the Brightline Watch. Brightline Watch is this annual survey of all the democracies in the world, and they rank them. And they assign points to them, essentially. And the higher the point score, the better the democracy. Canada, for example, is 88. Great Britain is 86. Mexico is 60. Israel is 49. And we are now 54. So we're between Mexico and Israel in terms of being a functioning democracy, and way below Great Britain and Canada. And the areas where they point out America is no longer operating as a full functioning democracy are our elections, because of gerrymandering in large part, and also because of the purging of citizens from the voting rolls in red states. Our courts, judges are appointed, and the judiciary is only partially independent. And the Trump administration is going after judges like crazy. Our law enforcement, prosecutors are subordinate to the president. Charging decisions are exposed to political influence. Look at Jim Comey. You know, there was an FBI agent who refused to do a perp walk with Jim Comey. Is it tomorrow is the day of his? Thursday. Thursday is the day of his arraignment. And they're going to perp walk him. And they were looking for, he's 6'4", right? Or 6'3", one or the other. And so they were looking for FBI agents who were big and beefy and tall. And they found this one guy and he said, no, I won't do it. And they fired him, or he quit, I guess. But, it's all for the cameras, right? This is Trump doesn't think he's running a country. He thinks he's running a reality show. And wouldn't it be cool to have a little civil war, Anyhow, law enforcement, the media, they point out the media basically has been consolidated under right-wing control. Government data, official statistics are no longer credible or believable. Trump firing the head of the BLS is a huge flag. And the civil service has been gutted, and civil service protections are being ignored in violation of the law. So there you go. Meanwhile, it looks like Donald Trump is preparing to attack Venezuela. This is over at the Sun, the-sun.com. America's military is preparing to seize ports and airfields in Venezuela, it's reported. The president stunned Washington by formally declaring the U.S. is in a non-international armed conflict with the Latin American terrorist organizations. We now have 8 Navy warships, a submarine, 10 F-35 Lightning II stealth jets, a 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit with 2,200 Marines with Harrier jump jets, helicopters, and armor. Puerto Rico has become a major staging point. Over the weekend, Venezuela's Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez claimed 5 F-35s, American F-35s, were detected by their air defense systems, and he's yelling about that. This is the same thing that Russia is doing with Poland and Latvia and Lithuania and Estonia. Senator Jack Reed, who is the top Democrat on the Armed Services Committee, warned Trump that he had provided, quote, no credible legal justification, evidence, or intelligence for these strikes. We are killing people who Trump is claiming are drug runners, and at least one of those boats almost certainly was not running drugs. You could see everything in the boat. It had like 13 or 14 people in it. And, it was an open boat. There was no drugs in there. And Trump killed them all. They might have been out whale watching. They might have been going out fishing. It might have been a tourist boat. I mean, there might have been refugees who were heading to one of the Caribbean islands. We just don't know. But they weren't carrying drugs. And Trump snuffed them. And MAGA is cheering, which is just pathetic. Just downright pathetic. Meanwhile, this amazing poll just came out of Pew Research. Back in 2019, before the pandemic, Americans had a really good opinion of Donald Trump economically. They thought he had run the economy really well. Of course, he had inherited Barack Obama's economy, and Obama had put the economy back together after George W. Bush, drove it into the ground. We had the biggest crash since the Republican Great Depression under George W. Bush, and Obama put it back together and rebuilt the country and handed off to Donald Trump a really, fine, well-run, economy. Just like Joe Biden did, by the way. The economy was the envy of the world. It was the cover of The Economist magazine, in the last months of the Biden administration. We were doing really, really well. Nobody knew it because Biden was an incompetent communicator, but He was a brilliant president. He did a very, very good job. And by the way, keep him in your prayers. Apparently his prostate cancer has gone stage 4 and probably will kill him, which is very unfortunate. But anyhow, this Pew Research study, 53% of the country believes Trump has made economic conditions worse. Only 24% say he has improved things. 74% of all Americans say the economy is either fair or poor. They cite high inflation, 17%, tariffs, 12%, and high cost of living, 9%. These are the top reasons for blaming Trump for an economy that seems to suck. 59% of the country back in November of 2018, like I said, in the middle of his last term, or, a comparable period of time, 59% of the country said the economy was in excellent or good condition. So. And finally, the Republicans are all hysterical about voter fraud. They use it as an excuse to justify these mass purges. There's one going on right now in Virginia, as Greg Palast pointed out in this program last week. They're trying to get ready for the gubernatorial election in November. And of course, the state is run by Republicans right now. So what do? They go into they go into the blue cities and, just purge everybody that they can. And the reason they say they're doing this is because, people are voting who aren't citizens. They claim it's Hispanics who are illegally voting. There's absolutely no evidence of that anywhere. But there is some evidence of voter fraud. And this is interesting. Jack Posobiec of Pizzagate fame, he also wrote this horrible book, which I actually read, called Unhumans. Calling liberals less than human. I mean, it was like a call for genocide or something. It was just a scary, scary book. Anyhow, according to Slate magazine, he used his parents' home address in Montgomery County to vote in 2018, 2022, and 2024. So he could vote in Pennsylvania, even though he lives in Maryland. So that's voter fraud. Steve Mnuchin was registered to vote in both New York and California. Sean Spicer was registered to vote in both Virginia and Rhode Island. Jared Kushner was registered to vote in both New Jersey and New York. Tiffany Trump was registered to vote in both New York and Pennsylvania. Steve Bannon was registered to vote in both New York and Florida. Former Georgia Republican Party Vice Chair Brian Pritchard voted illegally 9 times while on probation for felony charges, during which under Georgia law he's not allowed to vote. In Iowa, Kim Taylor wanted to help her husband win his 2020 congressional race, so she came up with a terrific plan. This is, by the way, I'm reading from a piece by Lisa Needham over on Daily Kos titled, "Oh, look, another right-winger seems to be committing voter fraud." So Kim Taylor comes up with this great idea to help her husband win the election, pretending to translate ballots for Vietnamese voters, then just filling them out in favor of her husband. She was arrested and convicted on 52 counts of voter fraud. In Nevada, Republican Dan Hartle used his dead wife's ballot to vote twice in the 2020 election for Donald Trump. And then, of course, there's the Villages, Florida's Trumpy strongholds. 5 people were charged with voter fraud between 2021 and 2023, including Robert Rivendender Jr., who bragged about working on Trump and Laura Loomer's campaigns and then signed his dead father's name to a mail-in ballot. So I guess, it's not voter fraud if you're a Republican, right? Incredible. Absolutely incredible. All right. What's on your mind? I'll pick up your calls on the other side of the break here. Let's do a little talk radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Speaking the truths Thom Hartmann would really prefer you didn't know all about. I'll be right back with you. Welcome back. Monty in Kingman, Arizona. Hey, Monty, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Tom. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, but I'm having a hard time hearing you. I need you to, if you're going to have me on speaker, just hold the microphone right next to your mouth, and we'll be good.
Are we good now?
Yeah. So what's up?
All right, excellent. I called the White House Thursday excuse me, to get to the main office to file my complaint to Donald Trump. And who, on a recorded message, answers? Carolyn Levitt. And she started slamming the radical radical left-wing. Anyway, she was slamming all of us because of the government shutdown, saying that the Democrats only want to give health care to the immigrants. Right. So, and that's why they shut down the thing. And I just thought it was really weird that they didn't leave any room for you to leave a message, which I thought was really odd.
No, it's not odd. They don't want to hear from the people. They don't give a damn about the people.
Line, yeah.
I know.
So, I just wanted to bring it to the world. Yeah.
That's
I couldn't
incredible.
believe it. And I'm afraid to call the White House because I'm afraid of being, swatted on because I'm kind of in Redsville here in Kingman.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it.
I call. I have my house walls lawn sign sitting in my lawn window, which is just a piece of glass. But you know what I mean. So I thought I'd bring that to the attention to you and the folks listening.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that. That's troubling. I mean, it's a violation of the Hatch Act, but of course these guys don't care about.
I know it's mentioned.
Yeah, they don't care about going to jail. And by the way, with regard to the shutdown, I was on Ali Velshi's show on MSNBC over the weekend, and I pointed out that the Republicans could reopen the government tomorrow. All they have to do is pass a resolution to suspend the Senate rules for the continuing resolution. It only takes 50 votes, and they've got 56 votes right now, plus the BP. So, Monty, thanks for the call.
They want to blame the Democrats.
Yeah,
there
you go.
Democrats.
Yep, thank you. Debbie in Oklahoma City. Hey, Debbie, what's up?
Hi, and thanks for taking my call. I just have a way out-of-the-box idea. Just thought maybe I'll share. What happens if the House and the Senate Democrats all change to Republicans, and maybe that will give Trump's Republicans, the weak ones, a backbone to stand up?
Nah, they would just say it's a stunt.
Yeah, but then on the news, what are they going to say? Those Republicans are the ones for the shutdown?
What's weird, Debbie, is they still can't say Democratic Party. They always say Democrat Party, and there's literally no such thing. This goes back to it actually goes back before Joe McCarthy, but he was the guy who really popularized it when he said, never say Democratic Party. That sounds too nice. Democracy, Democratic, it sounds nice. Instead, say Democrat Party with an emphasis on the rat. And literally, I mean, I'll bet from the last caller, if you call the White House or whatever, you talk to any of these guys, they will not say Democratic Party. They are incapable of it. And I don't know why the Democrats are not calling them out on it every single time they do it. And I don't know why, people on TV, on the Sunday shows, they constantly let these Republicans get away with talking about the Democrat Party. There is no such thing. Never has been, never will be. It's a slur. Debbie, I got to run, but thank you for the call. Fascinating suggestion. We'll be right back with more of your calls. Stick around. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. Way back in 1964, when Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Republicans started this rant about how the election of 1960, Jock Kennedy stole that election, and there's voter fraud in America. And it became a thing. They started this thing called Operation Eagle Eye. William Rehnquist was running it in Arizona, trying to intimidate Hispanics and African Americans into not voting, essentially. They've now used this claim that non-citizens are voting, this voter fraud claim, in virtually every red state to make it harder to vote, to purge people off the voting rolls, to make people's votes not counted with their exact signature matches. It's a scam. It's a grift that they've been running for 60 years, and the American media won't call them out on it. There's a whole piece about it called Trump and the GOP's Big Lie 2.0 over at HartmanReport.com. Please check it out. You'll find it fascinating.
Born in a mansion of winners and losers, kindness was weakness, shame never shown. Roy Cohn whispered, attack and destroy, a gilded facade built on failure alone. The hunger for power, the need for control, a perfect machine for a heart without soul. The last American president. Is this how the story ends? Democracy breaking, the truth forsaken. We rise or we descend. Reform, resist, remember. The call is heaven sent. Or we'll write the history books of the last American president.
23 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Alejandro in Miami. Hey, Alejandro, what's on your mind today?
Well, a lot of things about, whether we're heading into a fascist dictatorship or not. I wanted to, have a legal discussion on what you were saying earlier about whether the state can prosecute rogue federal agents somehow. Mm-hmm. And of course, I have to be the bearer of bad news. That's obviously very, very difficult for the state to hold any federal officers, accountable for anything because of the whole supremacy clause, which pretty much, as long as the federal agents are acting within the scope of their duty, the state really can't do anything against them. If they're acting within the scope of authority, even if they disagree with them, they can't prosecute them, right? And
right.
They can't say
but assault and kidnapping are crimes. If you do this without a judicial warrant, you are acting outside the color of law.
Well, that's something that they could try to argue that. I'm curious to see, if they try to argue that, the DOJ would remove that to federal court, and I guess they would decide that in federal court.
Yep.
Because they would say, well, I have a right to take this person, right? And they have to have at least an administrative warrant, from what I understand, some kind of administrative search warrant. But I guess that's what's the tricky part. It's if they have to somehow. I would wonder if people should just call the cops and they say, hey, there's a masked man trying to take these people away. The cops should respond, and if those agents don't identify themselves, the cops should just treat them as any random person just trying to kidnap someone. So then that would force a confrontation to occur. So I'm curious if, that's what people should do. Hey, look, there's masked people trying to kidnap this random person. He's asking for, okay, can you do something about it? They don't want to identify themselves. And the cops should be forced to respond to that because they can't assume that they're legitimate law enforcement agents.
Well, here in Portland, when these guys beat up this 84-year-old couple who were just standing on the sidewalk, apparently somebody did call the police. The Portland police showed up, and the ICE guys tear gassed them. At least that's what I'm hearing. I can't. Excuse me, I wasn't there, but
Well,
pardon me.
You know what they should. Yeah, what they should do, seriously, is like what the government, Governor Pritzker, he blockaded the city with some trucks outside the city to prevent federal agents from coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, they should just do that. Just blockade the entrance to the ICE, leave a big dump truck in front of them, force them to move.
Well, they came into this apartment building with a helicopter.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I was going to say, to the next part, what they could do is start to sue them under the Federal Torts Act.
Yeah, well, I think that's happening.
Everyone in that apartment building.
Yeah.
To hold them accountable.
I would be astonished if there were not lawyers down there knocking on the doors of that apartment building, or what's left of the doors. I read a report of a Chicago citizen who just went down there and walked through the apartment building and said half the doors are kicked in, and you can literally just walk into the apartment and steal anything you want because they haven't been able to replace their doors yet. I mean, these are poor people, right?
For sure.
But I would be amazed if there's not, some lawyers down there going, hey, we are here to offer you our services. You have a lawsuit here. Now, whether it'll go anywhere is another question, and certainly it's not going to stop ICE. They don't give a damn, and they've got the biggest budget in the federal government, in terms of police agencies. They've got a bigger budget than the FBI now.
Right. No, and that's why I think it's also they have to get rid of qualified immunity for all law enforcement, because once cops are held personally liable for money, they have to pay out damages, then they'll be singing a different tune. That's my personal
I agree, yeah.
opinion.
Qualified immunity is an abomination. Thank you, Alejandro.
The Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
27 minutes past the hour, back with more of your calls on the other side of the break. Stay with us. Club today. We're reading Locked Down, Locked Out, Why Prison Doesn't Work and How We Can Do Better by Maya Chenwar, who is, or was, I believe she still is, the publisher, or the editor, rather, over at truthout.org. This is from the introduction, the very beginning of the book. She uses a word I can't say on the air. I'll replace it with the word damn. Damn, 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 damn. I'm crying with my mother over the phone. It's late evening, December 25th, 2012, and Kayla, my only sister and best friend, has been arrested for the 7th time in the past 6 years. She's in jail again, and this time we're sort of hoping she'll stay there. If she asks, I tell Mom, I'm not bailing her out. Well, you know, we're not, Mom says, her voice low and far away, a weary echo of words uttered in months and years past. If she's in there, at least she'll be safe. Jail, we agree, may be the only place that can save Kayla's life, staving off her burning dependency on heroin. Neither of us acknowledges that regardless of whether Kayla stays clean while incarcerated, sooner or later she'll be getting out. Do we know what she's in for, I asked Mom. Does it matter? I think of Kayla cuffed and listless, being dragged through the doors of the Cook County Jail, catching the eyes of women she's known before in court, on the street, in juvenile detention, in jail, in prison. I wonder whether a part of her is relieved to be back. Later, when I pick up the phone and hear a robotic voice announce, you have a collect call from the Cook County Jail, press 5 to take the call, I press the hang-up button and get into bed. My attitude toward Kayla's incarceration was born out of desperation. She'd overdosed 3 times within 2 months, passing out on the street, awakening in abandoned buildings or crowded hospitals, her pulse barely ticking. Yet my wish chafed against not only my love for her, but also my politics, my ideals, my sense of justice and truth. After all, I run a social justice-based news organization and have denounced the colossus that is the prison industrial complex for as long as I can remember. For nearly a decade, I've corresponded with a number of people in prison as both interviewees and pen pals, and I've learned much from them about the violence and hopelessness of our system. My understandings of the power structures that create prisons have been guided by the work of people like activist and scholar Angela Davis, a staunch prison abolitionist. How could I reconcile my wholehearted opposition to the prison industrial complex with a desire to see my own sister locked up? When I look back on that time, I can only comprehend it by acknowledging the insidious, persistent role that prison occupied in my mind. It was closely connected to the role it occupies in larger society. Incarceration serves as the default answer to many of the worst social problems plaguing this country. Not because it solves them, but because it buries them. By isolating and disappearing millions of Americans, more than 2.3 million right now, making us the most incarcerated country on the planet, prison conveniently disappears deeply rooted issues that society, or rather those with power in society, would rather not attend to. Prison, writes Angela Davis, performs a feat of magic. As massive numbers of homeless, hungry, unemployed, drug-addicted, illiterate, and mentally ill people vanish behind its walls, the social problems of extreme poverty, homelessness, hunger, unemployment, drug addiction, illiteracy, and mental illness become more ignorable, too. But, as Davis notes, prisons do not disappear problems, they disappear human beings. And the caging and erasure of those human beings, mostly people of color and poor people, perpetuates a cycle in which large groups of people are cut off from mainstream society and denied the freedoms, opportunities, civil dignity, and basic needs that allow them a good life. In many jails and prisons, incarcerated people are tossed into a dank, dungeon-like solitary confinement cell when they are determined to have misbehaved. It's dubbed the hole. Isolated and dark, it shuts out almost all communication with fellow prisoners in the outside. Guards control the terms of confinement and the channels, if any, by which words can travel in and out. The hole presents a stark symbol of the institution of prison in its entirety, which functions on the tenets of disappearance, isolationism, and disposability. The solution to our social problems, the mechanism that's supposed to keep things together, amounts to destruction.
the disposal of vast numbers of human beings, the breaking down of families, and the shattering of communities. Prison is tearing society apart. This country's most marginalized communities bear the overwhelming brunt of that devastation, but ultimately we are all caught up in the destruction as the politics of isolation ruptures the human bonds that could otherwise hold together a safer, healthier, and more just society. The behemoth that encompasses the prison is called by many names. Most meaningful ones, I think, are those that convey the pervasiveness of its power, the way it infects the world outside as well as the people within. Scholar and activist Beth Ritchie uses the term prison nation, describing it as, quote, a broad notion of using the arm of the law to control people, especially people who are disadvantaged and come from disadvantaged communities, end quote. That control can take the form of prisons, jails, surveillance, policing, detention, probation, harsh restrictions on child guardianship, the militarization of schools, and other strategies of isolation and disposal, particularly deployed against poor communities of color, especially black communities. Others have used prison nation simply to demonstrate the system's vastness, how it infiltrates our culture and fuels our national politics, often in invisible ways. Prison industrial complex, PIC, is another key term. Rachel Herzing of the prison abolitionist group Critical Resistance defines it, and then she goes on through this. It's an extraordinary book, Locked Down, Locked Out by Maya Shin.
Share the Thom Hartmann program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. America is at a crossroads. In my new book, The Last American President, I reveal how Donald Trump isn't a one-off. He's a product of a decades-long scheme by billionaires and corporate oligarchs to destroy our democracy from within. You'll learn how Trump's psychopath father and also his mentor, Roy Cohn, molded him into a weapon for authoritarianism. How billionaire networks built the machinery that made his presidency inevitable, and how our democracy is dying from an empathy deficit that treats human suffering as acceptable collateral damage for profit. But authoritarianism is not inevitable. We can still reform, resist, and reclaim our democracy if we act now. This isn't about left or right. It's about democracy versus authoritarianism, about whether government still serves people or billionaires. The stakes couldn't be higher. Learn the truth and find out how you can save our democracy with The Last American President, my new book. More information at hartmannreport.com.
In a gilded hall under chandeliers bright, Trump bows low in the dead of night. Before the butcher, he bends his knee, selling out land, trading loyalty. Maps are burning, borders fade, freedom's price has been betrayed. A deal is struck with blood and lies, a traitor's oath in tyrant's eyes. Bowing to the butcher, hands stained red, treason drips from the words he said, turning his back on the brave and the free, trading their hope for his vanity.
36 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Ragnar in Mount Vernon, Washington. Hey, Ragnar, what's up?
Hello, Tom. I don't know if the American people is going to have to wake up. I think maybe I've told you about this before. I grew up on the Hitler in Norway as a young boy. Mm-hmm. And I remember them coming and taking our radios away. We had to keep the curtains and the blinds closed all day. We couldn't be outside after 8 o'clock. And the parents were running scared all the time, and the poor children, they were traumatized, and I'm still feeling some of the after effects of what I went through as a child. Mm-hmm. And I hope the American people will come to realize that all hell will break loose if this continues the way it is.
Yeah.
It's just sick.
I agree.
It's no fun.
It's a classic example of if you keep going down the road, you'll end up where it's pointing. You know, there's a cliche about that, but you know, I don't see any backward motion. I see Trump moving full speed ahead. You know, Trump and Miller and Homan and Noem. I mean, these people who really want to lock down this country. I am very concerned. Ragnar, thank you for sharing a voice of wisdom and experience. It's appreciated. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Good talking to you.
Talk to you later. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you. Florindo in Fairfield, Iowa. Hey, Florindo, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. I'm interested in something you said earlier about the police needing to stick up for the people in whatever city it was where ICE was breaking the law. And I think that's really a key thing, because it's gotten to the point where the government isn't working for us, obviously, and the people need to take it upon ourselves to uphold the Constitution by shutting down the country and demanding with the full force of the demos that the police work for us and protect us from this rogue government. And I think the solution has got to be, you know, independent media and PBS and ways of communicating, whether it's the paper clip or the $2 bill or whatever. We have to network so that people can organize independently of the powers that be and reassert our authority.
Yeah.
Because that's the only, I mean, the government's already shut down, so we should just, you know, follow their example and take the initiative. But it reminds me of when in 2020, Trump was going around saying there's fraud in the election. This election's illegitimate. And he was right. The fraud was him advocating the overturning of the election.
Yes.
And in this case, it's the same thing with him saying that there's been an invasion. There's crime in the streets, and it's the MAGA and ICE crowd committing the crimes.
Yeah.
They're trying to start, obviously, a violent insurrection so that they can claim martial law and put everybody in jail or something. But
Trump is lusting after the Insurrection Act, and my guess is that an awful lot of what we're seeing right now, you know, this positioning of the military in our cities and things like this, is preparation for November of next year, for, you know, roughly 13 months from now. If he can gin up, if he can get us right on the edge of people fighting back violently, and then next, a year from this month, next October, next November, just in time for the elections, he can have, a half a dozen cities on fire, basically. Then he will try to suspend the elections, or he will act in a way that makes it really, really hard for people to vote in blue cities.
Yeah, well, that's how he operates, and that's why we need the peace officers on our side.
I agree.
And
they are here in Portland so far. They're refusing to cooperate. They're showing up when they're called. The Portland police chief has been outspoken about this. There is no crisis in Portland. Portland's not on fire. Yeah. The ICE building is not under attack.
I heard
it's like
about the flowers.
There were 20 people there this morning, and most of them were elderly, and they're bringing flowers and laying them in front of the ICE building. I mean, this is the war zone. I mean, oh my God. So yeah, Florinda, thanks for the call. Spot on.
Okay,
I'm with you. Yeah.
Keep up the
good
work.
Good talking to you. Thank you, Jeff in San Francisco. Hey, Jeff, what's up?
I just want to prepare for the upcoming October 18th, No Kings.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did last time in September is I made up 100 flyers, and I put them on the doors of my neighbors. And I said, let's meet at the park right by our, in San Francisco, there's a park close to us.
Sweet.
And, you know, I got about 5 people, and we met up there, and we took the Muni down there, downtown, and went to the protest. And I suggest that to everybody else. You know, all you got to do is print up about 100 flyers, take a little toner out of your printer, and some time, and, you know, an hour to put them on everybody's door, and it's a good way to get, you know, community together.
Yeah, and a 5% response ain't bad for something like that at the last minute, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was about a week before, and I said, hey, you know, and so, you know, and I put my phone number and send me a text, and some, you know, people say, oh, so I can't make it, but, you know, I got, you know, people showing up, and it's, and then as people, you start talking with people, say, hey, they're going to come after our Social Security. Yeah. And they say, oh, no. And then you start talking to them, and yeah, they are.
Yep.
They're coming after it all, Medicare, the whole thing.
Yep. Yeah, they want to undo the New Deal. I mean, that's the bottom line here, is just, you know, reverse everything FDR did and everything LBJ did. Well said. Jeff, thanks for sharing that story. That was brilliant. Thank you. 43 minutes past the hour. Johan in Los Angeles. Hey, Johan, what's up?
I think what Trump is doing in cities is about staying in power for another term, like FDR did.
I agree. And he's openly bragging about it. I mean, you know, he's giving people Trump 2028 hats when they visit him in the White House.
Like, this is like intentional war, not, you know, like
it's war on the Constitution.
Yeah. And another one is about the Stephen Miller. Torture is a celebration of life and human dignity.
Yeah, when he was 17 years old, that was his
17 years
pitch.
old, yeah.
Yeah, we played that clip last week. It's
I
starting to
saw
go
over the
around.
weekend. And also over the weekend about the Russell bot about who wrote the blueprint of the Project 2025.
Yeah, it's pronounced vote, but yes, absolutely, Johan. Yeah, yep. Yeah, these guys are wild. I mean, you know, the Project 2025 is it's an explicit, laid out in black and white formula for destroying the America that we all grew up in. You know, the America of the New Deal and the Great Society, and turning us, you know, back into the America of 1900. You know, when there was mass poverty and there was a very small government. Johan, thank you for the call. 44 minutes past the hour. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
More of your calls right after this. Stay tuned. And welcome back, Susie in Gig Harbor, Washington. Hey, Susie, what's up?
Hey, thank you. I just wanted to share an epiphany I had last week. And here's the thing. I am not a God person, and I'm not a non-God person. I'm just a person. Luckily, I spent over 30 years in a really cool profession working with animals, wildlife, domestic, the whole shebang. And looking at animals and looking at humans, I believe that somewhere along the way in evolution, whether it was an actual somebody or an entity, they gave human beings the gift of being human. And every other animal on the planet, because I've worked with a lot, does not harm their own the way human beings harm their own.
Actually, chimpanzees do.
Not to the extent we do. I mean, we blatantly seek out to hurt and harm thought, part of being human.
I get it.
You know?
I get it, yeah. And then you've got a small number of people who just try to accumulate all the wealth, all the resources, all the food, all the housing to themselves. And you don't see that anywhere in the animal kingdom.
Absolutely not. And not only that, like I said, I don't know who, what, when, where, or why it was that decided we could be human and do this. But whoever that thing is now looking at the human species and going, they're not doing a really good job with this. They have to take them out.
So you think the aliens are going to come and get us?
No, not like that. I just mean we as a species cannot survive unless we get it together.
Yeah, well, we really are risking our survival as a species, both with nuclear war and with climate change. We've got two major issues here.
This unaltered hatred.
Yeah.
I mean, how does that benefit anybody? Oh, and then epiphany number 2 is Stephen Miller's running the country because President Philip is too stupid. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Well said, Susie. Thank you. Yeah, good one. Thank you.
Bye.
Michael in Santa Cruz. Hey, Michael, what's up?
Hey, hi, Tom. Thanks for everything. I want to suggest we stop using the phrase mainstream media, replace it with a more accurate name, more practical name, the top-wing media.
Or corporate-owned right-wing media.
That'd be good, too, yeah. The story they have is there's a left wing and a right wing. The right wing is always just the loyalists. The left wing is a projection of their mental illness, their selfishness. It's the dominator cultures. Continuing the 1789 distinction, and always just to mask the majority opinion on major issues that you always point out.
We have media that is, by and large, owned by, controlled by, and programmed to the benefit of the billionaire class in America. And, it's never been this bad. In all the history I've read, it has never been this bad. And it's going to get worse, as the Ellison family is rolling into town.
Yeah. The only thing I disagree with there is, by and large, at this point, it's about a 95% control.
Yeah,
if not 99%.
Yeah, and they're taking over CBS, and they're going to put Barry Weiss, this right-wing columnist who used to be with the New York Times. They're going to put her in charge of CBS News. So CBS is going to start looking like Fox, only subtle, right? Fox is just blatant about it. CBS will be subtle about it. But here we go. Michael, thanks for the call.
Step. Yeah. Absolutely consistent. You bet. Thank you, sir.
Sure enough.
Thank you.
Good talking to you. It's 49 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay tuned. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So Richard Nixon was a crook, but not a lot of Americans knew that in 1960. But he lost to John Kennedy, not because he was a crook, but because he didn't know how to use television. He refused to wear makeup during the debates. Jack Kennedy understood television, and it was why he was so, widely popular. Calvin Coolidge was the first president to use radio in 1923, but Franklin Roosevelt did his fireside chats starting in 1933, just after he was inaugurated, and they were often listened to by a third of Americans. That's why he got reelected 3 times. He was elected 4 times to president. If Joe Biden had done the same thing during his 4 years, reaching all the American people every week, using social media, the new media, because that was radio and television back in the day, he would be in the White House right now, or Kamala Harris. There's a whole article about this, how Democrats need to get with the plan. They need to figure out how to use social media and get some charismatic candidates out there. Over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled Democrats' Fatal Flaw. Check it out. That's before the hour. Picking up your calls here. Adele in Villa Park, Illinois. Hey, Adele, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Tom, do you realize that where you're going to be speaking in October 15th is literally right next to the Broadview Detention Center?
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that.
Right there.
Wow.
So be prepared with your gas masks, which I'm actually kind of not kidding.
Yeah.
And then, Tom, I wanted your viewpoint. Last Friday, Kristi Noem came, and so Pritzker allowed, it was the first time, Broadview police officers, state police, and sheriff's deputies. We had all 3 groups, lots of them. And the Broadview police in the black uniforms were required to stand in place. You know how they do shoulder to shoulder with a little space between them? Mm-hmm. And I'm very concerned about some of the protesters. We are an unorganized group. We're no group. There's no organization like Indivisible. We just show up. And us older ones, you know, we kind of are coming from a place of love. The younger ones, they're very angry, they're very militant, they're very sarcastic. And what was happening on Friday was these cops can't move.
Yeah.
And believe me, Tom, none of these guys want to be there. None of them.
Yeah.
So these young protesters are standing 2 foot away from their face, barking at them, disrespecting them, shaming them, and they are just standing there looking at the ground. The police officers? Yes.
Yeah, wow.
Like their anger is misdirected.
I agree.
Turn it to your right. Where
Yeah.
I know.
I get it. I get it.
I did. I actually went up to one of them and I asked them, "Why are you barking at this police officer?" We actually had a pretty good conversation, but it's an extreme concern to me. I love your opinion.
Well, unfortunately, I mean, what we have here in Portland and up in Seattle are these people who proclaim themselves to be anarchists, and they believe that the capitalist system is so corrupt and so destructive that it has to be crashed to the ground and rebuilt. They're like Maximilien Robespierre, you know, with the terrors in the French Revolution, tear it all down. And so they get out there and they just, do what they think will cause it to tear down. And they're hurting everything. They're certainly hurting their own cause. If their cause is to create a better America, an America that's, more fair and more just. And they're handing Donald Trump everything he needs to impose martial law in this country. So, yeah, I'm very concerned about it. Adele, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Spot on. CJ in Stoughton, Wisconsin. Hey, CJ, thanks for listening to WMDX. What's up?
Hey, thank you for taking my call, Tom. Even though we don't disagree, you always pick up on me. So, anyways, I wanted to talk to you about the shutdown and who's responsible because I want to be factual. On page 57, section 2141 of the Democrats' short-term funding bill, it does repeal the guardrails that kept illegals from getting Medicare and Medicaid. And the mere fact that the big, beautiful bill put up those guardrails, if someone needed emergency care in the emergency room, they'd get it. But who should have to pay for it? The American taxpayer? No.
Well, that's a law that Ronald Reagan passed, CJ. That was his answer to the Democrats saying that everybody should have health care.
The Democrats' bill will take away $200 billion from it, and also take away $50 billion
CJ,
from rural
I get your rant. Pause for a second, though.
fact.
The Democrats don't control the Senate. If John Thune simply put a bill in front of the senators that said it's not even a bill, it's a resolution, to change the Senate rules for a continuing resolution, to allow this continuing resolution to pass independent of the filibuster, they could reopen the government with 50 votes plus the vice president. And they have 53 senators, plus they've got 3 Democrats on their side. So the Democrats are not keeping the government shut down, CJ, it's the Republicans.
Yes, they are. They're not going to lift the filibuster. This bill passed.
No, do you understand what I'm saying, CJ? The Republicans can stop the filibuster. The Republicans can stop the filibuster, pass their own continuing resolution, and completely ignore whatever the Democrats have said. And it only takes 50 votes.
Have already voted for it. It only takes 5 more, and the mere fact.
No, it only takes 50 votes. CJ, listen to me. They can. Do you remember when Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema refused to vote to break the filibuster back on January 19th of 2022? Because the Democrats wanted to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the For the People Act that gutted Citizens United. And with 50, the Republicans were filibustering it. The Democrats controlled the Senate, but they only had 50 votes. And if those two, Sinema and Manchin, had voted with the Democrats, we would have had 50 votes. We could have suspended the filibuster and passed our legislation. Republicans right now, John Thune, the Republican leader of the Senate.
Manchin knew that was a bad bill.
No, the Republican leader of the Senate can lift the filibuster. He can break the filibuster. He doesn't need any bipartisan. He can do it with 50 votes.
They're not going to do it. And
well,
they
of course they're not
shouldn't
going to do it because the Republicans want the government shut down. They think it's going to help them.
This is Schumer and the
Schumer
Democrats.
has nothing to do with it.
They're afraid of AOC. And
CJ, John
left.
Thune can end the filibuster. It only takes 50 votes.
This is the Democrats' issue. They did it. They're repealing it. They want illegals to get insurance.
The Republicans
and that's the
can
fact.
break the Democratic filibuster with 50 votes. This is on the Republicans, CJ. Look it up. CJ, thank you for the call, and thanks for listening to us. We'll be back. It's 57. Well, it's the top of the hour. I'll be back on the other side with Matthew Boedy, I think Boedy, B-O-E-D-Y. This is going to be fascinating. Seven Mountains. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com. Today is the Seven Mountains Mandate by Matthew Boedy, exposing the dangerous plan to Christianize America and destroy democracy. We'll start with the introduction, the story of the mountains. The plan to Christianize America began 50 years ago with a vision from God, or so the legend goes. Bill Bright, the founder of a college campus evangelism organization, had just landed in Colorado in August of 1975 to participate in an event in Boulder. But something planted deep in his spirit had made Bright desperate to talk to Lauren Cunningham, a founder of another youth-oriented evangelism organization who was on vacation in Colorado. The vision from God that Bright had brought for Cunningham was a typed list of 7 influential areas of culture. If Christians could win these 7 areas for Christ, Bright said, the nation could be set right and return to its biblical origins. It would take a massive spiritual war, but ending the demonic control of these areas would have immense impact for the kingdom of God. The vision from God that Bright had brought for the Constitution, the problem was that God had placed Cunningham on a mountaintop near Durango on the other side of the state with no way to communicate. The man who had picked up Bright at the airport said he could get the two together. Someone got through to a ranger station in Durango, and then from there, someone on horseback found Cunningham's remote location. That man took Cunningham to a borrowed plane, which flew Cunningham to meet the man who had the urgent message from God. What Bright didn't know was that God had given Cunningham the same list, though his was sketched out on a legal pad. The two friends presented their lists to each other simultaneously. Cunningham later wrote, "Amazing coincidences like this happen all the time when Christians listen to the still small voice of the Holy Spirit." Over the years, the story of that 1975 meeting has been told many ways, accepted not merely as gospel, but a divine endorsement of the list that Bright and Cunningham created. Whatever the truth of the meeting, the list has become powerful spiritual lore passed down from one generation to another in the movement born from it. That movement is intent on destroying democracy by taking dominion in these 7 institutions: education, family, religion, government, business, media, and entertainment. Over the decades, many have made their mark on the list by envisioning different labels for it. While Bright and Cunningham spoke of areas of influence, others have called them gates, pillars, channels, and most commonly among the movement's supporters today, mountains. The preferred metaphor evolved over time, but the purpose of the list has remained the same: bring the kingdom of God to America by conquering each of these cultural domains. The story of the 7 Mountains movement told in this book is the story of those who inspired and shaped that 1975 list. It's also about how the list has come to dominate American political life in the 21st century without most Americans even having heard about it. This insidious victory is the work of a new generation of believers who have pushed it with more and more aggression, pushing us closer and closer to violence, threatening our society through their claim to divine urgency. In short, this is the story of how the list became a mandate. The spiritual energy behind this mandate pushed the list into the White House with the 2016 election of Donald Trump. From there, the movement exploded beyond the fringes of charismatic evangelicalism into larger institutions, influencers, and financial backers. To the handful of experts who have followed the movement for years, it was no surprise its supporters turned violent when the 2020 election didn't go the way they wanted, the way they say God wanted. This is where the movement has been headed. Yet even more frightening, since the 2021 insurrection at the Capitol, more Americans seemingly want what the 7 Mountains movement wants also. A June 2023 survey of 2,000 Americans estimated about 30% are open to the ideas associated with the 7 Mountains movement, such as things like the U.S. culture is fundamentally Christian, and Christian values should be solely and explicitly endorsed by the government. Another 2023 survey found a similar percentage of Americans either adhering to or sympathetic to these ideals. A second Trump administration only reinforces that. Of course, many of the Americans in those polls are the demographic most supportive of the mandate, the evangelicals. A 2024 survey showed that strong majorities of evangelicals agree broadly with the goals of the 7 Mountain movement. About 55% of evangelicals specifically agreed that, quote, God wants Christians to stand atop the 7 mountains of society, end quote. The survey also showed that the percentage of Christian Americans who believe in the mandate increased from just under 30% to over 41% in just 1 year. The surveyors note that, quote, what not long ago seemed to be a marginal set of beliefs has become a dominant religious framework among American Christians, end quote. The 7 Mountains movement has been adopted across the religious right, even by leaders who may not share its theology, because their followers are being motivated by the mandate. For example, the 2022 National Day of Prayer Guide from the Southern Baptist Convention asks its congregants to pray for the 7 centers of influence. Beyond religion, the 7 Mountains movement has become so accepted in American society that it has supporters from all levels of government. The book, The 7 Mountains Mandate, Exposing the Dangerous Plan to Christianize America and Destroy Democracy, by Matthew Boedy.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of our program. On the line with us is Matthew Boedy. He wrote this absolutely brilliant book, The 7 Mountains Mandate, Exposing the Dangerous Plan to Christianize America and Destroy Democracy. And some just mind-boggling stuff in here. You've got to check it out. His website is Matthew Boedy, Boedy.com. And Matthew Boedy on Blue Sky, Matthew Boedy on Twitter. Matthew, welcome to the program. I should call you Dr. Boedy. You have a PhD in all this stuff. You're an associate professor of English at the University of Northeastern Georgia, right?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thanks for the generous introduction.
My pleasure. So, first of all, I was fascinated by this article over on, I think it was, what was it, Mother Jones? Yeah. His book on Charlie Kirk was about to come out, then his subject was murdered is the headline. Tell us about that.
Well, as you might imagine, it's been a difficult, challenging, busy last 3 weeks since the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Yes, my book was scheduled to come out on the 30th, and it did come out on the 30th, but well before that, I've been around the world on Zoom answering many questions about Charlie and his legacy and what he wanted to do through Turning Point. And many people across the globe are interested in the Christian nationalism part of the story.
Well, tell us about that. What was Charlie trying to do in that context?
Charlie had expanded Turning Point in the last few years from what most people think of it as this conservative college student or organizing group. That's his campus events were his bread and butter, as you well know. But in the last few years, he expanded Turning Point into an arm of Christian nationalism and had an arm of Turning Point directed toward each of these 7 mountains, which are the 7 areas of our culture that people who advocate for Christian nationalism want to take back or to take for Jesus, want to take over from the anti-Christian forces they believe are persecuting Christians. So each of these 7 arms, there's an arm for Turning Point. There's a Turning Point Education. Turning Point Academy is their K through 12 schools, and of course they have the higher education part of that. There's a Turning Point Faith, which is their outreach to churches and pastors and congregations. They have Pastors Summit. In terms of the Mountain of Family, they have the Young Women's Leadership Summit, which his wife Erica have spoken at many times. They also have outreaches to businessmen and to entertainment. They have a White House correspondent and a daily show. They have the brand of Turning Point all over the cultural map, and this is why I say, even with the tragic death of Charlie Kirk, Turning Point is built to last because of all the things that they're into, and they're into making us, America, into a Christian nation.
Now, you said that they're trying to do this for Jesus, but I've read the Bible. In fact, I've read the Bible 4 times. I don't recognize Jesus in Charlie Kirk's teachings. It seems like they're talking about somebody else. Explain that.
They do ignore or lessen verses you might associate with Jesus. Certainly, they like to frame Jesus as this masculine, even hyper-masculine warrior for the kingdom, that he is the king returning and we should give him the sword. This goes directly against the verse where he talks about Peter to put down the sword.
Yeah. Although he also did say, I didn't come to bring, I came with a sword. But go ahead.
No.
I'm sure they're quoting that extensively.
Yeah. So they take the verses that one might expect about Jesus in talking about personal evangelism, a personal behavior, changing your personal views or being saved. They take those verses and apply them to institutions, to cultural institutions. So to have Jesus as your personal savior, to someone who died on the cross for your sins, now becomes Jesus who can fight and win the victory for the culture, who the culture also then has sins. As you might imagine, some of those sins are pretty obvious since the 60s to these people. And I think that their picture of Jesus, honestly, sounds a lot like Donald Trump in terms of this fighter, warrior ethos we heard from the Secretary of Defense, this strong-willed, perhaps clearing the temple, but also someone who does not turn the other cheek. And they're specifically looking at verses that say that's misinterpreted, that makes him to be feminine or feminist or weak.
I get it. So the 7 Mountain campaign or program or what, you started, your timeline starts with Rushdoony back in 73, as I recall. Yeah, R.J. Rushdoony. This is way bigger than Charlie Kirk's organization, Turning Point, although that was heavily funded by right-wing millionaires and whatnot. But they're not just at Turning Point USA. How broad, how extensive is this?
This 7 Mountains mandate is associated with groups that were behind the insurrection, the New Apostolic Reformation, if I ever say that word correctly.
Apostolic.
Yeah, I can never say that word correctly. And they have many leaders around the United States. One of them is running for governor of California. His name is Che Ahn. He's spoken at Turning Point events. The NAR is a global, kind of network, as is the Seven Mountains Mandate. So there's a large collection of charismatic pastors and leaders or self-appointed prophets and apostles that do the spiritual part of this. But the Seven Mountains Mandate is not just a religious movement. It is a political movement. So there are people that have learned that and passed it down. And Rob McCoy, the pastor who spoke at Charlie's memorial, passed it down to Charlie Kirk. And as I argue in the book, Charlie's the third generation of this mandate. So you can see it's been around for a long time and therefore has lots of followers and advocates. And I would suggest there are many people in the Trump administration that want to do at least part of this. And then Trump is pushing it. And as Charlie said famously in 2020, Donald Trump was the first president to understand the 7 areas of our culture.
Is this book, The Seven Mountains Mandate, the book that includes the information about Charlie Kirk, or are we talking about a separate book?
No, it's the same book. I'm sorry. Yeah. So the book lays out the mandate and how Charlie and Turning Point are the heir to the mandate.
Yeah, I get it. So is there any kind of organized or even disorganized opposition to this within the religious community, among the various churches in the country? I mean, we've got some progressive churches. Yeah. The United Church of Christ, I believe, is. But is anybody actually pushing back?
Yeah, I mean, there's groups like Christians Against Christian Nationalism that organize themselves. I think there are several still Christian denominations that while they may be Trump supporters in their congregations, don't necessarily like the kind of rhetoric or the kind of dominion casting that Turning Point does. Turning Point has made inroads in the Southern Baptist Convention. Of course, as I mentioned, the charismatic groups, those are all kind of non-denominational. Rob McCoy is a pastor in the Calvary Chapel movement. So all of those are certainly into the Seven Mountains movement. But the more conservative Presbyterians or the more Reformed Presbyterians, they're not necessarily into this, but they're not then organizing against it either. And I will say there's a faction of Catholicism that is nationalism. J.D. Vance is a good example of that. It's a small part of it.
And
so
Leonard
you
Leo.
See, what percentage of Christians support this? There's been polls and survey that says that 30% of Americans support some idea of Christian nationalism or the Seven Mountains Mandate. So that is a lot of Christians, but not necessarily the majority of them. It's a minority movement on purpose.
Yeah, I totally get it. How do they deal with the dissonance with the words of the founders? I realized that there were a few, like Patrick Henry, who is the largest slaveholder in Virginia, was a fanatic right-wing Christian, but he just said something famous, basically. I mean, in fact, he refused to participate in the Constitutional Convention. But you had people like Jefferson and Adams and George Washington refusing to acknowledge that he was even a Christian. Jefferson, repudiating it. Adams was a Christian, but he was horrified by the efforts of Christian preachers to engage in politics.
Right.
Do they just ignore this stuff, or do they
No, they have
rewrite
their
it?
own. They have their own history, their own misguided, lying history, mainly from a guy named David Barton, who's written several books.
Is he still around?
Yeah, he's still quoted. He's being used in Texas to help their.
He just makes stuff up. I mean, he's like literally invented Jefferson quotes out of thin air that I've seen repeated over and over again.
Yeah, right. No, he's still around, and he is the go-to historian for this movement. And I think one particular way in which they use the founding fathers, they do this vague group, the founding fathers, as you point out, they're individuals who have quite different beliefs. And one of the things they say, I think Charlie Kirk is often quoting John Adams when John Adams wrote, America needs a religious and moral people. He certainly wrote something akin to that, but he was not writing it in the same manner as Charlie would define it. Charlie would suggest that America was a Protestant nation and they want a Protestant consensus. That is not entirely true. So I think they make up stuff, as you well know, and then kind of misinterpret, just as they do with Scripture. They twist and turn it so it works for them.
How much of a threat do these people actually represent to the United States in terms of, turning this country into a place that is intolerant of Jews or Muslims or atheists, for that matter, or even just people who don't go to church? How real is this threat?
I mean, I think it's real to at least the mountain of government and the mountain of education at this point because of Donald Trump being in office. They want to elect people to the high places, as Lance Wallnau, one of the founders, calls it, and have them rule in anti-democratic ways, which we see from the president. But I also think with the mountain of education, they're really winning the battle in different states with their governors and state board of educations and superintendents to get their curriculum within public schools and private schools. The Trump 1776 Commission is a good example of this. Charlie Kirk was on that commission. So I think they're really moving toward this. And as I argue in the book, while the mandate over the 50 years it's been around has had some success, Turning Point has brought it to as close to success as it's ever been because it's doing all 7 at once. So if you want to know how dangerous it is, as long as Turning Point is doing all 7 of these, then it's really going to be successful as long as Turning Point has the millions of dollars in staff that they have.
We're talking with Matthew Boedy, PhD, the Associate Professor of English at the University of Northern Georgia, about his new book, The 7 Mountains Mandate. Matthew, I've got about 25 seconds here before we hit a hard break. You want to just quickly recap what the 7 mountains are?
I always forget the list, but it's the mountain of education, business, entertainment, media, family, government, and religion. I think I've got all 7 there.
Yeah, they basically want to take over each one of those and Christianize them. That's their shtick?
Yes.
Yeah.
To Christianize America.
There you go. It's incredible stuff. The book is The 7 Mountains Mandate, Exposing the Dangerous Plan to Christianize America and Destroy Democracy and Replace It with Theocracy. It's incredible. Matthew Boedy. Matthew, B-O-E-D-Y. Thank you so much for dropping by, Matthew, and for writing this book. It's brilliant.
Thanks again.
Good talking with you. I'll be back with more of the news of the day. Actually, we have a Geeky Science and your calls right after this. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Exposing the con and conservative. I'll be right back with your calls. And welcome back. Sue in Kirkland, Washington. Hey, Sue. Thanks for listening to KBCS. What's on your mind today?
Hey, great. This is the first time I've been able to reach you, so I'm excited. And it's unfortunate I have to follow that guy because he was so smart.
He was good.
But in any case, yeah, he was really good. I didn't know about the 7 mountains. It's very enlightening. So I have a couple of points I want to make first, and then I'll get to what I think we should do. Okay, 1, gerrymandering hides all the actual number of Democrats and independents. You know, it's skewed. 2, Trump has said literally he hates his opponents. So he hates over half of the country.
Yep.
3, we need to come together as a force, like the Jimmy Kimmel response. So my idea is, I think we should stop paying federal income tax.
That's a crime.
I don't want
You can go to jail for that.
No. I'll send. Oh, they can't put us all in prison, can they?
You know, they wouldn't have to. All they'd have to do
cannot.
is put a couple hundred of us in prison, and it would break the, it would break the back of the movement.
Oh, we have to be able to do something, and
Yeah.
I don't want to send my money to this criminal.
I understand. I saw this in the '60s. You know, there were in the early '60s, or in the mid '60s, actually. Actually, this goes back to the '50s. There were right wingers who were refusing to pay their taxes, and in fact, I was a news guy at a radio station, WITL in Lansing, when the state police and the IRS or FBI or some kind of federal guy showed up in our studio and asked us not to publicize the fact that they were doing a raid on this house full of these right-wing anti-tax protesters. And then during the Vietnam War, there were people who were refusing to pay their taxes, or at least the portion that they thought went to the war machine. They all got busted.
Well, we have to be able to do something. And I know, like, I used to be a teller, and I know that you cannot cash a check if it has stipulations on it. It can't go to certain needs, so you could write on your federal income tax check that, or however you send it in, that it's not to be used for, any Republican needs or any war, something, because to fund this government that hates us is really painful. It's like insult on injury,
Yeah, I get it. Well, keep thinking, Sue. I like the way you're thinking, but I don't think that's the solution. But keep thinking.
Well, it's not violence, and we don't hear anything about this judge that her house was just frickin' blown up. You know.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to hear more about that. Sue, I got to move along. Thank you for the call, Jeff in Portland. Hey, Jeff, what's on your mind?
Hey, happy Monday, Tom. Hope you had a good weekend. An earlier caller mentioned that Hague speech, and Colin Jost did a really funny parody of it on Saturday Night Live
I saw
weekend. Yeah, it was great. And I did see you on Ali Velshi. Great synopsis of the shutdown and the modern histories of the two parties. And to use Paul Krugman's characterization of this administration, this is an autocracy of dunces and malevolent incompetence. Otherwise, they would have delayed the ACA, the end of the ACA tax credits till after the elections in 2026. So like you told Ellie, I think the Democratic leadership is on firm ground in the fight. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'd like to see them using the megaphone to decry what ICE is doing and point out that this Republican budget gave $170 billion to these lawless mass goons who are terrorizing the black and brown communities across the country. And as you say, Tom, it starts there, but where does it end? This is coming down to, as the Oregon judge said, we're a country ruled by constitutional law, not martial law. So that's the fight we're in, and it's the fight for democracy.
Yep. Well said, Jeff. As always, thank you so much. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com.
The cracks are showing in the freedom wall. We hear the warning, we hear the call. Power's poison, truth's been chained. If silence wins, then we share the blame. Impeach or perish, the fire's at the door. Stand for the people, or be nothing more. History is watching, your name's carved in stone. Save the republic, or die with the throne.
Welcome back. 24 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Mike in Madison, Wisconsin. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Tom, I got a question for you. Why isn't there not any talk about Acre Trader?
I don't know what Acre Trader is.
Trader?
No.
Okay, Acre Trader is the last corruption of J.D. Vance. Billionaire Peter Thiel, who was worth $20.8 billion, and members of the Walton family who own Walmart. In 2022, J.D. Vance invested $65,000 in Acre Trader, an investment LLC company that buys distressed farmland from farmers, mostly soybean and cropland from farmers.
They're going to
on the dollar.
They're going to have a hell of a year this year.
He's secretly making millions of dollars from suffering farmers, suffering from Trump's tariffs, and causing many American farmers to lose their land. 80% of farmers voted for Trump and Vance. Now they are crushing the American farmers with tariffs for their own profits.
Yeah.
You can read all about this on YouTube, Google it if you want. But J.D. Vance invested $65,000 in 2022 in Acre Trader. They buy billionaires.
What's his? No, I get that, Mike. What's his investment worth now? Do you have any idea?
He says it's worth millions of dollars.
Yeah, not surprised. Not surprised. These guys take care of their own, you know.
I'm talking about it. You should Google it, Tom. Acre Trader.
Yeah, I should. I didn't know about it. Thank you very much for that, Mike. Appreciate the call. Ollie in Northwoods, Wisconsin. Hey, Ollie. Thanks for listening to Civic Media. What's up?
Well, I just haven't heard anything about this new Trump coin, and I am appalled to think that our government would put out a coin with a campaign slogan of somebody who literally tried to cause an insurrection.
I agree with your horror. Apparently, they're getting around the law, which says that only dead presidents can be on coins, by saying that this isn't actually a U.S. currency; it's a commemorative coin.
It's just infuriating.
Yeah, but they're going to do it. They're going to do it.
To think that this can be done, and also I think that the one article that I saw where they put out, were talking about this being real, and they violated the Hatch Act because
there's that too. There's that too. Yeah, you can't use government money or resources or properties to promote a political agenda. Yeah, I get it. Ali, I'm with you. Thank you. I am horrified too. Thank you so much for raising that. Actually, we kind of that story slipped through the cracks here on the program, so I appreciate your reinserting it. Thank you. We'll be right back with a quick Geeky Science and your calls. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Helping you win the water cooler wars. I'll be right back. Our book for the Thom Hartmann Book Club today is A Nation Forged by Crisis, A New American History by Jay Sexton. And I'm reading from the introduction. This is page 9. The quest for national security and global power, America's shifting position in the international economy, and fluctuations in immigration have made the United States the nation that it is today. Americans' foreign relations have been conditioned its history not only in their cumulative effects over the long haul, but also as a result of their volatility. In periods of crisis, America's position in the world has lurched in unexpected directions. For as inexorable as the rise of the United States appears in retrospect, there have been contingent moments in which the very existence of our nation was up for grabs. This is the essence of crisis. The world turned upside down, the known replaced by the unknown, panic reigning as people struggle to maintain their balance and shifts in the very ground beneath their feet. It came with a speed and ferocity that left men dazed, New York Times correspondent Elliot Bell wrote of Wall Street's catastrophic collapse in October of 1929. Quote, the market seemed like an insensate thing that was wreaking a wild and pitiless revenge upon those who thought to master it, end quote. Crises are contagious, spreading like viruses from one realm to another. It's not without reason that the word crisis was associated with medical conditions and health scares in the 19th century. Each of the periods under consideration in this book were less a singular crisis than a set of interlinked crises. A political crisis could trigger an economic panic, which in turn could intensify social conflict, and so on. As these pandemics spread through the body politic, crisis itself was normalized, becoming an almost accepted characteristic of an age. Just as foreign crises have spread to the United States, domestic ones have spilled across its borders, unsettling foreign countries and peoples, as well as reconfiguring America's connections to the world. Consider the fateful winter of secession that followed the 1860 election of Abraham Lincoln. The crisis over slavery that divided the Union into warring sections that led to a series of sharp reversals in America's position in the global system. The foreign capital that had rushed into the roaring American economy in the preceding decades suddenly began to flee. Indeed, more capital left the United States in 1860 to 1862 than came into it. Also a once-in-a-century occurrence. One of the world's most valuable commodities and America's largest exports, Southern cotton, was confined to the ports of the Confederacy as a result of Richmond's ill-fated diplomatic strategy, leading to unemployment and social unrest in the British textile town of Lancashire. The most unexpected reversal was how the national security that the United States had attained after the war against Mexico in the 1840s was suddenly imperiled, with European powers encroaching once again upon the Western Hemisphere. Meanwhile, the Confederate emissaries across the Atlantic in search of alliance
were in search of alliance with Britain. Our country, Secretary of State William Seward lamented in early 1861, after having expelled all European powers from the continent, now threatened to relapse into an aggravated form of its colonial experience, and like India, Turkey, China, and Italy, become the theater of transatlantic intervention and rapacity. A wider view of American history that looks beyond the nation's borders brings into focus not only the migration patterns, economic flows, and international rivalries that have connected the United States to the world, but also those rare moments in which the very existence of the nation was in question. Perhaps none was more pregnant with implications than the autumn of 1877, when the fate of the Patriots' bid for independence hung in the balance. Having proclaimed their independence to the world the previous 4th of July, their cause had stalled on the battlefield and in the diplomatic courts of the old world. I think the game is pretty near up, Washington privately confessed at year's end. To accomplish their independence is not quite so easy as to declare it, the British philosopher Jeremy Bentham haughtily remarked. But then a series of events forever changed the course of modern history. The stunning Patriot victory at the Battle of Saratoga in October, the drafting of the Articles of Confederation in November that, for all its limitations, further demonstrated the political resolve of the Americans. And most of all, the alliance signed with France in February 1778, which provided the Patriots with the resources, military assistance, and naval power that ultimately tipped the scales in their favor. There are comparable Saratoga moments in other crises in U.S. history, as we shall see. These contingent moments played out in their own distinctive ways, but are joined by a common denominator that has been curiously forgotten in our age of U.S. global power. Foreign states and people have played decisive roles in the critical moments of American history. As we make our way through our own era of global instability, in an unprecedentedly interconnected world, there's perhaps no more important lesson from the past to keep in mind. Crisis may beget crisis, Franklin Roosevelt said, as his administration transitioned from battling the Great Depression to entering the Second World War. But the progress underneath does not wholly halt. It does go forward, end quote. Like so many of Roosevelt's public statements, this one reveals a truth even as it conceals others. The United States came out on the other side of its greatest crises as a stronger and more efficiently organized nation, as Roosevelt suggested. The process of mobilizing resources to counter threats catalyzed innovations in political economy, such as the creation of a national financial system during the Civil War, and the economic reforms of the New Deal. The book is A Nation Forged by Crisis by Jay Sexton.
You're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, or one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio and tag You're It. So have you noticed that the Republicans are pretty much not talking about a constitutional convention anymore? They used to be gung-ho to rewrite the Constitution. You know, they wanted to put corporate personhood in there. They wanted to change it so that women can't vote. They wanted to do away with the election of senators, repeal the 17th Amendment, take us back to them being appointed by the states. They had all these weird, they wanted to outlaw labor unions, all these weird ideas, but they've stopped talking about it. I mean, they're still moving forward on it, but it's not. Project 2025, for example, you know, their ultimate talking document, does not have one single mention in it about a constitutional convention. Why would that be? Well, it's because the Supreme Court is doing their work for them. I mean, you know, just they have overturned Article 2. They've overturned the 1st, 4th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. They've overturned Article 1, Section 7. All the details of this whole thing are over at HartmannReport.com. You got to check it out.
He didn't just break it, he blew it apart. Like Chernobyl in a business suit, no conscience, no heart. Poisoned the truth, made cruelty a trend, taught the GOP that empathies pretend. He caged up children and laughed at their cries, called Nazis fine people and swallowed his lies. Tore up the map, set fire to the ground, and danced with the devil as the world spun around. He's a black hole in a red hat, a gravity well of hate, spray tan and sulfur, marching toward
36 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So this was our Geeky Science for the day, a randomized controlled trial published yesterday in the Journal of the American Medical Association's Internal Medicine journal, shows that an antihistamine nasal spray that you can buy over the counter, it's called Azelastine, A-Z-E-L-A-S-T-I-N-E, Azelastine. I believe it's a once daily squirt up your nose stuff. And what they did is they had two groups of people. It was a placebo-controlled group. So they had two groups of people. One group was squirting azelatine in their nose, and the other group was squirting probably saline, salt water. And they looked at them over a period of time, and it's a 56-day period. Oh, and they did the nasal spray 3 times a day over a 56-day period. And here's what happened. During the follow-up period, 2.2% of the people using azelastine became infected with COVID, whereas 6.7% in the placebo group got COVID. That's a 69% lower rate of COVID infections among the people who were using the antihistamine nasal spray. And among those who used the nasal spray and got COVID, that 2.2%, among those, azelastine demonstrated an increase in mean time to infection. In other words, it took 31 days to get them sick instead of 19 days, which means they probably were repeatedly exposed to COVID and finally it stuck after 32 days. And the symptomatic infections and the symptoms were reduced. The PCR confirmed symptomatic infections and the symptoms were reduced. Azelastine also significantly reduced rhinovirus infections in the treatment. Now, that's the common cold, typically. These are also coronaviruses, perhaps by coincidence, I don't know. But they found that only 1.8% of the people who used this nasal spray got the rhinovirus infections compared to 6.3% in the placebo group, which is a huge difference statistically. So, get yourself some azelastine nasal spray, huh? If you're going to be on an, I actually ordered some. And because I'm going to be on airplanes next week, for this book tour. So I don't like going through airports. I always wear masks when I'm in airports, but hey, double down. So what's on your mind today? Shirley in Mesa, Arizona. Hey, Shirley, what's up?
Hi, Tom. By the way, tricolloidal silver, to inhale that, it kills a lot of germs.
I have used it before, but it's been decades. So
yeah,
I am familiar with it.
I started using that. Yeah, it's great. I called because every time I hear someone talk about the...
You need to turn down your radio or you're going to distract yourself to Kingdom Club here.
I just totally lost it.
Yeah.
Okay, nomenclature. Hal Sparks came up with this. Mm-hmm. Trump ballroom, that ballroom he's trying to distract us with, the Epstein ballroom. Every time. Epstein ballroom, Epstein shutdown.
Yep, it's the Epstein shutdown.
But still, it's the Epstein shutdown. And ISIS, plural of ICE, because they are terrorists.
Interesting.
We should be, they are terrorists. They're terrorizing people.
That's true. That's true.
And the other one, if I say Pee Wee German, who do you think of?
Oh, of course. That's Stephen Miller's nickname.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't know that. I just heard that recently, and I love it.
Yeah. Or Nosferatu or whatever. It's but yeah, Pee Wee German is the more common one because he does a great Goebbels imitation. I mean, he's just like he's just he wants to be Goebbels when he grows up, Joseph Goebbels. Shirley, thank you for the call. Yeah, Hal Sparks is a smart guy. He's a good guy. I've known Hal for years.
Oh, he's awesome.
Yeah, Shirley, thanks a lot for the call. Thank you. Spencer in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Spencer, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
I'm fine. What's up?
Well, a lot of times people refer to Donald Trump as a 34 times convicted and all these different things.
Mm-hmm. He's a felon.
They never say the son of the Klansman who's trying to live up to what his daddy wanted him to do.
Well, that's a good point. His father was arrested at a Klan rally in, 1919 or something like that, way back in the day.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering why nobody ever mentions that.
I think that there's just so much, shall we say, crap flying around, to paraphrase Steve Bannon, that it's a bleep storm. I mean, there's just so much stuff. But yeah, Donald Trump's father was arrested in a Klan rally, according to the press reports that I've seen. I mean, I don't have firsthand knowledge of it. I don't even think my parents were alive back then. But
wasn't he also in that parade that marched in front of the White House?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just don't know. Spencer, thanks for the call. Thanks for reminding us of that. Yeah. There you go. Trying to live up to his daddy's Klan reputation. Mark in Rochester, Minnesota. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind today?
I just wanted to bring up the name Eric Prince of Blackwater fame.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, with all these ICE agents, how they got so many of them to be the big burly people. If anybody's looking into any contracts with Eric Prince or one of his I'm sure he's changed names. He's changed names every time one of his groups get in trouble. So
yeah,
I wonder how many of these are private security people that are doubling down.
I'm wondering how many of them are Proud Boys and 3%ers. I mean, they're making like $190,000 a year with a $50,000 signing bonus, and they're
well. Yeah, I see that a couple times. I watch you on Free Speech TV and sometimes on YouTube, and a couple times I don't pay for no ads, and sometimes an ad comes up for me to join.
To join ICE on the YouTube stream.
Yeah, it just breaks in for 4 or 5 seconds, and so I almost would sign up, except I'm 4 months older than Donald Trump. we both graduated in 1968. Unfortunately, I got drafted, but he didn't.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just the way these guys act and operate, like I told your screener, they've had military training, whether it's for the good guys or the bad guys.
Well,
and
some of them act like
probably,
that. Some of them act like they haven't. So they're probably just drawing from a broad spectrum of big beefy guys.
Yeah, well, but when you have mercenaries that are willing to do that, you have to have training and the willingness.
Yeah. You want people who have a malicious streak to them to begin with.
Yeah, quick. Go. Can you talk about Banned Book Week this week?
What about it?
This is National Banned Book Week.
Okay. Well, you just put it out, Mark. So I didn't know, but thank you for that. Now we all know. Appreciate it, Mark. Thank you very much for the call. It's 44 and a half minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
So get out there and read some banned books. I wonder if any of my books are on any banned books lists. Wouldn't surprise me. And welcome back, Tim in Aloha, Oregon. Hey, Tim, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, it was interesting. We've talked many times. I'm pretty consistent about watching your program. And the guest you had talking about the Christian religion.
Yeah, Matthew Boedy.
Because I can relate to that. My grandparents landed in Ellis Island in 1909. Went through all the procedures. When they settled in New York for a while before they decided where they wanted to settle, he went and got an English Czech dictionary. He was very meticulous about adapting.
Mm-hmm.
He got a little farm going in Nebraska. He became the town barber. And when he went to open his little barber shop, every little town, including nowadays, had a priest and the priest came in to welcome him to town and said, "I want to welcome you to town, my son." And he said, "I really appreciate the welcome, but my father is in Czechoslovakia."
Funny.
You see what I mean? And that's the way he taught his children. All of them were honor students. My two uncles ended up getting McDonnell Douglas off the ground and inventing products that helped World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And their whole ideology was based on being decent and facts.
Yeah.
This is 120 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you think we'd live in a little better society society if that was the...
Well, Czechoslovakia has a long history. I mean, they've had some rough times too, but they have a long history of being one of the centers, European centers of culture. You know, Prague is one of the few cities that wasn't just destroyed in World War II.
And thank goodness, because it's an amazing place.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the city of 1,000 spires.
Would you think we'd live in a little better world if that was the case? They were doing that 120 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Back when Prague was under Soviet control, Louise and I tried to visit. We sat in a line at the border of cars for about 4 hours and finally gave up and turned around because we lived just down the road from there when we lived in Germany. But so I've never made it to Prague. I really want to. It's one of the few cities that I've never visited, and I want to. I've read so many great things about it.
Right. Both sides of my family are Czech.
Yeah, Dan Brown's new book, Secret of Secrets, takes place in Prague. And it's got so much information in it about, you know, the history of Prague and everything. It's just amazing. I'm in the middle of reading it right now. It's a fascinating book. Tim, thanks for the call, and thanks for the background. Doug in Fort Collins, Colorado. Hey, Doug, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, how you doing today?
Great.
Prague is a beautiful place. I was lucky to get through there.
Oh, cool.
I heard a previous caller talk about like not paying federal taxes, and I know you really just can't do that. The states can't really withhold it.
Except for state employees. They could theoretically do it with their own state employees, but even that might be breaking the law.
I would go with the simpler, easier route and just claim more exemptions. I'm a single person, but I claim
tax fraud.
So I break even.
Then you go to jail for sure.
No, not until you file at the end of the year. I can claim 3 dependents, become April 15th, then I just claim myself.
If you do that, you're going to end up owing a whole bunch of money to the government at the end of the year. And I've been through this. If you don't deduct enough on at least a quarterly basis, they will hit you with huge penalties.
Yeah, I don't know how much more you would actually owe if you claim like a 3rd or a 4th dependent. I would think it would depend on your income. On your income. You're paying as you go, so you're not going to get the penalty for not paying in advance.
Yeah.
Of course, April 15th you're paying.
No, they've got a system to come after you. I can tell you, Doug. Like I said, I went through that one years ago by accident, but it bit me, and I had to pay a couple $100 in fines to the IRS. Doug, thanks for the call. I got to run. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. America is at a crossroads. In my new book, The Last American President, I reveal how Donald Trump isn't a one-off. He's a product of a decades-long scheme by billionaires and corporate oligarchs to destroy our democracy from within. You'll learn how Trump's psychopath father and also his mentor, Roy Cohn, molded him into a weapon for authoritarianism. How billionaire networks built the machinery that made his presidency inevitable, and how our democracy is dying from an empathy deficit that treats human suffering as acceptable collateral damage for profit. Authoritarianism is not inevitable. We can still reform, resist, and reclaim our democracy if we act now. This isn't about left or right. It's about democracy versus authoritarianism, about whether government still serves people or billionaires. The stakes couldn't be higher. Learn the truth and find out how you can save our democracy with The Last American President, my new book. More information at hartmanreport.com.
He said just day one, but we knew the score. Now he's sending troops to settle old score. From LA streets to the Capitol's dome, he's making this land feel less like home. He's a dictator with a MAGA crown, turning our freedoms upside down.
Welcome back. 51 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Jim in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Hey, Jim, what's up?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm totally confused. I'm looking up on ChatGPT about your continuing resolution and 60 and going down to 50.
Mm-hmm.
And it says if they do that, then it's going to be open for the future to the same thing.
Not necessarily.
What are you trying to,
it depends on how they do it. They can.
Okay.
The resolution can. For example, on January 19th, 2022, when the Democrats controlled the Senate and they had 50 votes, and they tried to pass the For the People Act and the John Lewis Civil Rights Act, or Voting Rights Act, excuse me, Chuck Schumer wrote a resolution that said that the filibuster will be suspended for these two specific pieces of legislation, and only for these two specific pieces of legislation. Now, he could have written that resolution to say that we're just going to allow legislation to pass with 50 votes, but he didn't. So it depends on how the resolution is written. And you can ask ChatGPT about that, and it'll confirm what I said.
I will do that later and see. Thank you very much.
Okay, good talking to you, Jim. Appreciate the call. Robinson in West Lynn, Oregon. Hey, Robinson, what's on your mind today?
Oh, thank you, Tom. I was shouting out to my headset while you were talking to both Sue and Clyde to give a quick rant about the interstate compact of blue states retaining federal income tax and working it amongst themselves. Yes, not paying your federal income taxes is a dangerous form of protest. You don't want to do that. But give a quick rant, and how do we find out more about the interstate compact? I first heard about it from you.
Yeah, frankly, I don't know that anything has actually happened, Robinson. There was talk about an interstate compact where they would withhold the federal income tax deductions for state employees. States can't do anything else. I mean, for example, I own this little company that does this radio show, and I've got 2 full-time employees and a bunch of part-time employees. And so I withhold their taxes. I have to, every paycheck, I have to take those taxes out. We put them in a checking account, every month or every quarter. I don't know. We've got a CPA who does it, but, every quarter we deposit those with the federal government. So I wouldn't be able to do that. I would be breaking the law. And they can't individually do it. They would have to change the number of deductions in order to do that, because they would have to force me to do it, which I would be unwilling to do because I'd be breaking the law. So the only employees that a state could control the taxes on would be the state employees. And then they would probably get sued by their own employees because, probably half of them are Republicans. So I don't think it's going to go anywhere, and I don't think it's going to work.
Okay, I misunderstood. I'll talk to a finance person and a tax person, see if they can shed some light on it. But
okay.
Yeah, I hear you now.
If you learn something that contradicts what I said, please call back and let me know, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot, Robinson. Cheryl in L.A. Hey, Cheryl, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. First of all, I just wanted to let you know I've been using Azelatine for probably about 3 years, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I use it mainly, during allergy seasons, the spring and the fall.
Uh-huh.
And I have never had COVID.
Wow. There you go.
But I do keep up on my COVID boosters, too.
Yeah,
fact,
well, so do I, but I got COVID
20.
anyway.
Yeah, my sister and her husband had both had it twice.
Yeah.
And I know very few people that have never had it.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing I just wanted to mention real quick is, I had pre-ordered John Fugelsang's book, Separation of Church and Hate, on Audible. And I've been listening to it, and it's like I have to keep going back and listening over and over again. There's so much information.
Yeah, it's a great book.
And
John knows his stuff.
I wanted to ask you about your book, The Last American President.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be like on Audible or anything like that?
It is right now.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
So I can go ahead and order it on Audible.
Yeah, a friend of mine, I don't have personal knowledge of this, but a friend of mine sent me a note in email, Saturday, I think, over the weekend, saying, I'm halfway through listening to your book, and the guy who's reading it's really doing a great job, which is, nice to hear, because, I just don't have the time to read my own books for these guys.
Yeah, I hear you. Another thing, I don't know, I don't see a whole lot of it mentioned, but on the media, but I think it was last Saturday, a man drove a car into the steps at City Hall, downtown L.A., and there was like a 2-hour standoff.
just a crazy guy or somebody trying to protest?
Yeah,
or what?
and he had a sign on the front of his vehicle, on the windshield of his vehicle, that said, "Please help me, Donald J. Trump."
Whoa. Yeah, it sounds like somebody who's got some serious mental issues. That's really unfortunate.
Yeah, and he was a veteran, white man, an elderly guy. He had a long gray ponytail.
Yeah, Trump will try to figure out a way to turn that into the radical left is coming for us, don't you know? We need more guns. Cheryl, thank you for the call. And thank you for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us. So get out there, get active, tag your it. Have a wonderful afternoon. Stay safe, be good to yourself and the people around you, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.